ground. A-Chain, they haven't stopped the running game, so go that way, and it's another touchdown.
This is 365 Sports, powered by Sikkim365.com.
2nd down and 21. Dracovic has all kinds of time to throw. He's got Zay wide open. Catches it at the 18. Now he's looking for blocks. He's going to get him, and St. Flowers is going to score.
365 Sports is presented by IdealMRI.com. High-quality MRIs for $497 or less. IdealMRI.com. Your health is important, so is your budget.
Headed for Tank. He'll give it a go. First man misses. He's got an alley. Right back up the middle of the cut up midfield. There goes Tank Dell. The burst inside the 20, and he's gone. Touchdown Cougars on the 68-yard punt return.
365 Sports is also brought to you by Texas Farm Bureau Insurance, protecting Texans since 1952.
C.J. Stroud to Smith and Jigba. Great move. Gets down the sideline. And a burst. Smith and Jigba. Touchdown, Buckeyes.
Have you subscribed to our YouTube channel? Search 365 Sports on YouTube. Brought to you by TFNB, your bank for life.
Lane Kiffin was trying to get a timeout, but instead it's a first down, and it's a touchdown for Butte.
Now here's David Smoak, Paul Catalina, and Craig Smoak.
It's midway through the week. Some people call this Hump Day. It's Wednesday, and it's March the 8th. The Big 12 men's basketball tournament officially tips off tonight with a couple of different games. We will get into that, what it means for tomorrow's schedule with a couple of teams waiting to see who wins tonight, whether it's, of course, Texas Tech and or West Virginia, Oklahoma, and or Oklahoma State. We will get into a couple of things. One of our guests today, Brian Murphy, WRAL in Raleigh, North Carolina, he had heard an interview that was on a station, a talk show in Carolina involving North Carolina's AD, and we'll have that for you. He'll join us again with us today at 3:30. Jeremiah Dickey of Boise State, Mack Rhoades of Baylor at 4 and 4:30. Paul Mills, they're dancing. Oral Roberts ran the table during the conference, won the tournament as well, a one-bid conference. He'll be on at 5, John Machota, and then Paul Catalina's top 5, and we got some things to get to. But let's start with tonight in the NCAA Big 12 tournament. Texas Tech and West Virginia at 6. We know Tech will have to run the table. West Virginia could get in with a win or two. At 8:30 or whenever the next one starts, no earlier than 8:30, Oklahoma and Oklahoma State. We know Oklahoma has to run the table, and Oklahoma State might have to win it maybe 2 games and possibly play if that's enough to get them in.
Yeah, the way that Oklahoma State's played lately, they might have to win it too. I don't know. I mean, it depends on how, poorly the committee looks upon them, especially with their late season swoon. And they had a bit of early season swoon too. Like in the middle, they were quite good, but late in the season, just really bad. And for Texas Tech, I think it'll be interesting to see has this situation sapped all the energy out of it. I know that a lot of people maybe compare it to the Chris Beard situation, but Craig made an excellent point yesterday in that Chris Beard's situation didn't have anything to do with anybody on the team. This is a teammate, this is someone who had to deal with this. This is people who heard about this and the way that maybe there was some other stuff going on that's maybe worn them out overall, the long haul with Mark Adams. So even though an assistant coach is in charge now for this tournament, it doesn't feel to me like the same thing as Rodney Terry taking over a team that was already playing well and loaded for bear, and just maybe had to get over the hump of the initial shock of Chris Beard before moving on, which Texas did very, very well this year. This is kind of a different time, a different point of the year, and, it's really kind of hard to rally around knowing that you have to win 4 games in 4 days to get to the NCAA tournament, and you have no room for error. I don't know if Tech will have the emotional gumption to do it.
I mean, I saw a picture of them from practice, I guess it was yesterday or something, and they all were big smiles and seemed happy. I mean, maybe it's situation where everybody's happier after the fact because the guy who was causing the problems, or the consternation, or just the agitation is no longer there to do so. I don't know. For sure, we're not there. Obviously, only the players on the team and the close assistants and whatnot know exactly how the feeling is around that building right now. But I could see it being used as motivation and fuel for them tonight against West Virginia. So, yeah, very curious to see exactly how the Red Raiders come out with this, recent news and how they're able to rally around one another and what kind of a run they could potentially go on. And obviously, West Virginia and Bob Huggins are going to have something to say about that as well. And then Bedlam should be, fun. We're only going to get so many more of those matchups. Now in basketball, that might continue on forever and ever for all we know. I mean, you got to play non-conference basketball games, so maybe that's something that, unlike football, we'll see and there will never really truly be a goodbye, but maybe not. So, we're going to obviously get some matchups between those two next year, but there's only so many officially remaining. And for a spot to move on the Big 12 tournament on night one, that should be a competitive little game there, although it's been a struggle, to say the least, for Oklahoma this year overall and Porter Moser. But, yeah, that should be a good game just because of the two teams and their hatred for one another.
Well, the winner of tonight's game, West Virginia and also Texas Tech, whoever wins that game will get Kansas tomorrow at 2. The winner of Oklahoma State, Oklahoma, the 7-10 game, will get Texas tomorrow night at 6. Baylor, no matter what, plays Iowa State for the third time at 11:30 tomorrow. And obviously Iowa State just drilled them and opened the Big 12 conference schedule, drilling them in Ames. K-State TCU is the nightcap tomorrow. Championship game eventually 5 o'clock on ESPN on Saturday afternoon. So that's that. So also this story yesterday evening, Brian Murphy, Murph Sturf, he is at a TV station in North Carolina. Put this up on his feed. This is ACC, could change its distribution model. Again, could. Florida State's AD is on record wanting to look at unequal revenue sharing. Clemson's AD followed like the next day. North Carolina's AD, there you see the check. I'm not sure you're going to satisfy everyone with a differential payout. In fact, I'm relatively confident you're not going to satisfy anyone. But continuing to what he said, as you look at the other leagues and see the revenue gap, it becomes critical sooner rather than later. This is from A.D. Cunningham at North Carolina. And the differential distribution, all of that. Brian's going to join us here at 3:30 to discuss what was said in the interview to a radio station out of Carolina. He's also at the ACC men's basketball tournament, and he'll be in between games with us as well, but he'll be with us on the show at 3:30. So, Paul, check. There's one team missing out of this list. Who would it be? Would it be Virginia, or would it be who? Miami? Would it be?
I think Louisville actually is one that we kind of. I think people forget that Louisville's in the ACC. I mean, not that they don't, but they don't really think of them there. But they are one of the most consistently successful. I know that basketball's fallen on very hard times, but they have a great basketball history. They have a really solid football history. And athletic department across the board is pretty good, and they care a lot about it. Now, a lot of the news has been kind of negative for them lately because of, the Patino situation, how the last basketball coach didn't work out either and all that. But they are a pretty, we saw the numbers. They get good TV numbers. It's a pretty large market. There are a ton of big fans for Louisville, very passionate ones. So I would think that they, to me, would be fourth, but not too far off would be Virginia and Miami in that list of the top tier ones. And Pitt probably thinks that they're in that as well. I think Pitt belongs. And then you kind of get into the others of the conference. Like NC State is kind of in the middle, but Wake Forest, Duke, Syracuse, Georgia Tech, all those are pretty small schools that don't, have the same focus on their overall athletic program. Most of the time they pick kind of one thing, like Duke. They're good at football, sure. David Cutcliffe did a great job. Mike Elko did a great job last year, but you look at, what do you think of when you think of Duke? You think of the Cameron Crazies. You don't really think of them scoring touchdowns. You think of them winning NCAA basketball championships. So, yeah, I think it's probably one of those, but I think Louisville probably deserves to be on that list for sure of teams that, might feel that they deserve a bigger share, whether that's feasible or not.
Yeah, one thing he said was they want to make sure that in any, revenue sharing, they want to reward the teams that invest the most. And I would imagine that's, particularly with football and men's basketball. And so he feels they're one of the schools doing that. And therefore, as well as, the amount of value that they bring, they need to, see these things re-examined and figured out a little bit better to where it does reward those folks who do want to invest and those who do bring the value, and that's all understandable. But, you just listed off another 3 or so schools, and that's like 7 schools that feel like out of this conference that they feel like they deserve more. And so there's, another half that feels probably like they either like the way that it is currently because it benefits them or that maybe they feel like they deserve more. Like, I wonder where that cutoff line would be because you can't have, 10 out of 14 schools that we deserve a little bit more and then 4 are making less and then or 7 are making more and then 7 are making less. That's going to be a nice little puzzle for them to solve, and I just wonder how much pushback there is to that and how deep do you go. That was my question last week when this first got brought up by Florida State and Clemson was, all right, who considers themselves more valuable? And I know there's numbers and statistics and whatnot that can lay all that out in nice, clean, lists that we can look at and decipher that pretty quickly. But, it's a very curious little puzzle for them to solve where there's clearly some schools that are driving value that are barking now and barking very loudly and publicly. And they're not sitting there threatening to leave tomorrow, but they are saying that they can't afford a $30 million gap between them and their competitors. And we know that gap's already developed and it's only forming and becoming even more of a gap. And so while that contract doesn't run out for quite some time, it is notable. And it sounds like a bunch of people just trying to get ahead of things. And that makes sense. That's what they need to do. They need to get ahead of this and solve this problem before it becomes a major problem and turns into something years down the road that really does completely cave the conference. But at the same time, there are people that can read that and feel like the conference is already starting to cave in anyways. When you've got now 3 programs, athletic directors who are saying that they deserve more money and that this needs to be re-examined, that's going to lead to some more discussion, obviously, and eventually there's going to have to be discussion that leads to a solution. And what that solution may be, as simple as for a few years, over these long years that still are sitting there on your contract, you divide it up unequally, but then what does that do to those schools that aren't receiving as much money? They're now less competitive than they were. The conference is even more unbalanced than it was. So what does that lead to? And does that make everybody happy? Probably not, right? We've stated more than enough times now that unequal revenue sharing is not something that typically leads to a more successful, happier conference. So, very interesting comments, not all that different from last week, and nothing imminent by any means, but something to definitely keep an eye on because something's going to have to give there eventually.
By the way, Jason Shear, who has been on with us, covers Arizona, which also means covers the Pac-12. Yesterday, the Pac-12, according to Wildcat Authority, and that doesn't mean others haven't reported this, sources indicate to Wildcat Authority there was no deal or numbers presented at Tuesday's Pac-12 meeting. Now, it wasn't in person. The tournament's going on in Las Vegas. Even it's been said that George Kliavkoff is not going to have any kind of statement. And but there was at least some sort of, whether it was a phone call, Zoom, whatever, and no indication of anything imminent being presented as of now. I asked Jason, a little bit more about what was said. He said all I heard it was an update, no numbers, just a general update with no numbers or timeline or anything really about what may be there with a TV or media deal. So there's that. Also, today at 4:30, an hour and 15 minutes from now, Big 12 Commissioner Brett Yormark is in Kansas City. That's where the men's tournament is about to tip off, as we mentioned tonight. Blake Kirchhoff covers the Big 12 in Kansas. Big 12 Commissioner Brett Yormark. Now, none of this is breaking news, but this is a quote from him last night, and he will meet with the media for a short media session today at 4:30. If expansion presents itself, this is what he's been saying now for a long time. If it's the right opportunity, if it's additive and creates value, we're going to pursue it. The future is really bright. Now, that's just a very generic, nothing breaking there, but kind of just, again, validating what he said before, or just a punctuation on what he said before. He will meet with the media today at around 4:30, and we'll see, if anything, what comes out of that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't expect anything besides similar comments to that to come out of that. He's basically made the same comments over and over again. Yes, we're open for business, and no, I'm not giving you any details or naming names, and you can guess or you can read it, eventually through it, a report that, states Gonzaga is somebody that they're looking at, something along those lines. But he's, unless he's completely changed course, is not going to be up there here in an hour or so talking about, like, yeah, we're going to go poach the Pac and doing all of that. And so I like that he's just, stirring the drink a little bit more and not saying anything that's, just a hard, line in the sand or anything along those lines. There's not a timetable. There's not anything all that specific. So I think he probably enjoys the amount of attention that realignment talk, whether it's leading to anything or not. It has, at least shined a spotlight on the conference, and, the way that you perceive it from whatever chair you're sitting in, you may look at the Big 12 in a little bit of a different light. You may look at them as a little bit stronger than they were. You may look at them as a little bit stronger than some others that maybe you didn't consider them stronger than previously. Maybe you look at them as that top non-Super 2 conference. Whatever you look at it, it's a changing landscape. He seems to have a good hand on the wheel and some fresh ideas in mind, and hopefully some of those hit. And it seems like he's already kind of freshened up the decorations around the conference, and everybody seems to have a pretty good feeling about the direction it's headed. Whatever direction that may be is a total mystery, as we all just speculate and wonder when the next shoe drops. But I think that the Big 12, at least up to this point and on paper, really did themselves a great service when they pivoted to Brett Yormark following Bob Bowlesby. I think he's handled it well. I kind of like that he's the agitator, even if it's unintentional, although I think it's probably he's smart enough to know that it's intentional at times, rather than always having to be on the defensive, as the conference always seemed to be.
Yep.
He's not like the strong hand, but he's not just getting trifled with either. I'm curious to hear if he's got anything new to say. But, yeah, that quote's basically the same thing that he said, last summer, and anytime expansion's been brought up is everything's on the table and we're interested, and if it makes sense, we'll do it. But it's got to make sense. And, what makes sense right now, I guess Gonzaga to a certain point makes some sense. But, outside of that, I know there's all that Pac-12 talk and whatnot, but that doesn't seem like it's imminent by any means.
Yeah, and Mack Rhoades will join us at 4:30. That's the time Yormark will be in front of the media, and I'm sure Mack and Yormark and others, Kirby Hocutt and Gene Taylor and Jamie Colbert and all the others are the ones who have been perhaps they're having some sort of impromptu and or meetings, and we'll ask Mack about that specifically when we get him today at 4:30. John Gassaway of ESPN.com wrote an article about 355 teams that won't win the NCAA tournament. Well, we're not going to go over all 355. I'll tell you, these teams were all among. Okay, here we go. Fairleigh Dickinson.
No.
Okay, and they may have already gotten in.
Can I circle back to one thing
Sure.
real quick? The Pac-12 stuff, nothing came out of that today.
I just said that.
Did you say that?
Yeah,
okay,
I
I thought you were just mentioning Yormark. I didn't hear that.
Yeah,
that
no,
long.
I mentioned that with Jason Shear. No,
sorry.
that's okay. No, that's okay. The 8 teams he says can win it. Well, 25 near misses. But of the 25, 4 of them in the Big 12. It's Iowa State, Baylor, Kansas State, Texas, in no particular order. I'll include A&M because they've been hot down the stretch, beat Alabama. Those are among the 25, but near misses. The 8 teams he says can win the tournament. One of these surprises me. Which of these do you think is the one that surprised me? Alabama, UConn, Houston, Kansas, Marquette, Purdue, UCLA, who just lost their best defender and maybe one of the best defenders in the country to a knee injury. I just saw that with Jeff Goodman reporting that. Tennessee.
UConn? Is that the one that surprises you?
Nope.
Tennessee?
UConn's been kind of just flirting with this whole thing. Tennessee has been riddled with injuries. And, they had an injury again about a week ago. That doesn't mean they're not going to all be back and might even be back for the tournament, but they've been kind of beat up a little bit. Maybe asked me that a month ago or maybe a couple of months ago. Yeah, and I'm not saying they can't win it. They're really, really good. But it seems like after they beat Texas, they kind of started getting beat up a little bit, and then they got and so I was surprised that they would be a part of that. Not that their names among those near the top, but was surprised that they were among the 8 who could win the NCAA tournament. If they do, good for Rick Barnes and the Vols. So there you go with that.
I guess Tennessee. I guess he didn't put Baylor on that list in spite of their guards because of...
No, it wasn't the guards. Oh, no, you're right.
But in spite of the guards.
Why do you think they were among the near misses?
Oh, they're a turnstile on defense right now.
There you go. That's exactly what he said. That's exactly what he said. Their defense was the worst defense in the Big 12. All right, here's one with Iowa State. 9-9 record, which is really a nice achievement in the Big 12. Bop, 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 bop. On the other hand, this is also an offense that scored well under a point per possession during a 4-game losing streak that closed out February. That's what kind of got to him. Kansas State. If last November you would have envisioned them, then an explanation would be needed for them in Kansas State about why not. Take one proud step forward. Jerome Tang, we know what he's done. Will this continue, though? In year one, the vibe included 30% three-point shooting by Big 12 opponents. Will that continue in the case of the field of 68? Actually, it could, in which case the near-miss label could well be misapplied. In other words, can they keep teams from shooting well against them when it comes to threes? So that's why Kansas State is a part of this list. You asked about UT. I know you have. Marcus Carr had a phenomenal year. The fifth-year senior hitting more shots, recording more steals than ever. His team, however, lackluster on the boards despite the size they have, particularly on the offensive end. And so that is why they were not included among the 8. And TCU has shot exceptionally low number of threes. Even the rare attempts tend to be misses. This makes the opposing defense's job even easier in handling Eddie Lampkin and Mike Miles. So there's why those teams from the Big 12 were not included among the 8 that could win it.
And Eddie Lampkin not playing in the Big 12 tournament.
There you go.
Due to personal matters. I don't know if you saw that or not, but they announced that a little while ago that he will not be with the team at all in Kansas City and is stepping away to deal with personal matters. So, not sure what's going on with Eddie Lampkin, but obviously a great player, and don't know what that means after Kansas City wraps up, as far as the NCAA tournament goes. But that's something to obviously keep an eye on as well.
There you go. All right, when we come back, we'll discuss. And we've looked at Florida State and what happened a couple of Fridays ago. And they were the first in the ACC publicly because of that board of trustees that was public. And Matt Baker was listening to it while getting a Honda looked at a car dealership. We had him on. And then Clemson the very next day. And then it got kind of quiet. That doesn't mean it wasn't being reported and people weren't reacting to it. Well, now North Carolina talks about unequal revenue sharing with their AD. All of that and more. Brian Murphy and eventually Jeremiah Dickey, Mack Rhoades, and more, and Paul Mills. This is 365 Sports. IdealMRI.com. What can an MRI do? Find either what hurts you or make sure, well, that's not it. So if you have a shoulder, a knee, a lower back, something that is bothering you and it's painful, and your doctor wants an MRI, Ideal MRI can do that for you with a state-of-the-art technology MRI machine that I've been in it. I've told you that story. But also save you a ton of money. How much? The average MRI is around $1,100. Theirs is $497 every single time. So you could get 2.5 MRIs there to equal what is the average of one. The average, if it's $1,100, then there are some that are $1,500 or more. So imagine that as well. But also get the evidence. Either one, there it is, there's a ligament issue, a muscle issue, whatever. And or, well, it's not that, so it might be something else. We need to look elsewhere. Dr. Rob Maxey and his staff of techs and specialists, they're fantastic. Also, the fact that they're on their own. They're in the Central Texas marketplace. They have their own business. So there's not a long wait for getting an MRI, and there's not a long wait when you get there to have your MRI done. All of the above is a win. Not a lot of wait, not hard to get one, and yet again, believe me, they are doing a lot of business for those who are injured. And also the fact it's $497 or less, IdealMRI.com.
During Ram Truck Month, shop the greatest selection of new inventory in Central Texas at Allen Samuels. Ram trucks have all the quality for work or play, with impressive towing capabilities, heavy-duty payload capacity, smooth ride, and a luxury feel interior design. If you're looking for a truck that can do it all, come see the possibilities of a Ram truck. And if we don't have exactly what you want in stock, we can help you build the custom car, truck, SUV, or van of your dreams. Shop Allen Samuels, DCJ.com, or come in to see us today at Allen Samuels in Waco.
Do you or your kids get nervous about going to the dentist? Stonewood Dental, Dr. Steve Childress, he can help.
I've spent a career taking care of patients who as children had bad experiences, and now they're adults that hate going to the dentist. If I get a kid at 3 years old and they come every 6 months and it's a happy experience, it's normal for them. Now they have an accident at 6 or 7 or 8 at school. Now they have a broken tooth or a trauma, and they have to come here. They're used to lights, they're used to water in their mouth, they're used to experience, they already trust us. It's amazing what we can do with that kid without it being a negative thing. But if I see a 6 or 7 or 8 year old that's never been to the dentist, and now they have a trauma or an unfortunate unexpected toothache, it's harder to do that for that kid and it not be somewhat of a negative experience. So bottom line is I try to teach kids and adults and teenagers and everybody the way I'd want my family treated, which is where it's a necessary part of life. You just take care of it. It doesn't have to be that big a deal.
Learn more, stonewood-dental.com.
Baylor Scott & White Southwest Sports Medicine and Orthopedics, the team physicians for Baylor Athletics, diagnosing and treating all sports-related injuries, including concussions. These specialists also provide orthopedic services for athletes and non-athletes alike, whether it's knee or shoulder pain, a wrist injury, orthopedic spine care, and even an arthritis and total joint clinic. Trust the doctors. Baylor Athletics Trust. Baylor Scott & White Southwest Sports Medicine and Orthopedics wants to get you back in the game.
Hey, this is Bryce Petty, former starting quarterback and two-time Big 12 champion, and I know firsthand the importance of being in top shape both on and off the field. So listen up, men. If you're feeling beat down day in and day out and looking for that high-performance edge that separates the men from the boys, then look no further than the Petty Clinic Low T in Waco. Petty Clinic is a comprehensive men's healthcare clinic with an atmosphere catering to men. Board-certified Dr. Kent Petty has a special interest in offering the highest quality medical care to men of all ages. Some of the services offered include screening and treatment for low testosterone or thyroid, infertility, high blood pressure, diabetes, high cholesterol, sleep apnea, while offering comprehensive wellness exams and complete men's health lab panels. High performance men, remember, it's not just a Petty thing. This is Bryce Petty, encouraging you to reach out and Google search Petty Clinic Low T or go to pettycliniclowt.com and get your complimentary lab screening today.
It takes time to reach goals. It's a truth that applies to more than sports. It goes for your financial goals as well. You work hard for your money and you deserve an investment strategy that lines up with your game plan. And Chuck Verno, your Edward Jones financial advisor, can help. If financial investments aren't putting forth the effort you desire, stop by today for a financial review. Chuck Verno, 720 North 64th Street in Waco, 254-732-1161. Edward Jones, member SIPC.
Waco Regional Tennis and Fitness on Lakeshore Drive is premier, elite, life-changing experience where you can change your mind, body, and soul. Waco Regional Tennis and Fitness offers over 40 group exercise classes each week, including boot camp, indoor cycling, and more. If you haven't been there in quite some time, you're missing out on the improvements for our members. New flooring in the weight room and locker rooms, new paint and mirrors added in the weight room and group exercise room, with more new machines arriving over the next few months. New free weights, weight machines, TRX, rowing machines, stationary bikes, new treadmills, new elliptical machines on spacious weight room floor. Personal training with Christy London, Randall Corley, and Alex Botch, where you will be encouraged and motivated to grow. There's sauna, whirlpool, tanning bed, and kids club. The amenities are great. 16 tennis courts plus an 1,100-seat stadium court, 8 pickleball courts, youth and adult tennis and pickleball lessons. Visit our website, wacotennis.com, or visit Waco Regional Tennis and Fitness on Lakeshore Drive in Waco.
This is 365 Sports.
The 3 o'clock hour is sponsored by Waco Custom Marketplace. Meats, sweets, Texas treats, and a cut above the rest. 425 Lake Air Drive, Waco.
We have kind of been keeping up with every not just the Power 5 conferences, but so many conferences that are coming and going and what's happening in the future. And, of course, we covered the Florida State AD, Board of Trustees, and then Clemson the next day. And then last night, I'm looking at the timeline, Brian Murphy. As you look at the other leagues and see the revenue gap, it becomes critical sooner rather than later on A.D. Cunningham at North Carolina and discussing what's going on with, of course, the ACC. And that's now check mark number 3 among the elite, you would think, in the ACC. Brian Murphy joins us from WRAL covering the ACC tournament. Brian, thanks for your time. When you heard those notes, was it just a matter of time before we heard from North Carolina?
Yeah, I think, Bubba Cunningham told me in October that they had a committee looking at unequal revenue distribution. So I wasn't surprised that other ADs have started talking about it. I guess I was a bit surprised that North Carolina has joined with, Clemson and Florida State and Miami sort of pushing for it.
Brian, do you think that this is going to be a long process of posturing before they get what they want? I mean, like this grant of rights is essentially forever. And apparently legally ironclad beyond the realm of even the top legal scholars in the profession. So how does this become anything other than schools complaining about not having much money?
Yeah, I mean, I think, the ACC is making more money than it's ever made before. And I think that number is only going to continue to rise, but it's not going to rise as fast as the SEC and the Big Ten. So you're going to hear from schools like Florida State and Clemson and probably North Carolina that, hey, we need a little more. I think one way it could get solved, and this is kind of speculation, but, the college football playoff is about to pump a lot more money into each conference. And you come up with a system where, teams sort of get to eat what they kill. If Clemson keeps going to the playoff, they get to keep a larger percentage of that revenue. If Florida State or North Carolina make it, they get to keep a larger percentage of that revenue. And if Wake Forest or Syracuse make it, they get to keep a larger percentage for themselves. I think there are some ways that they can allocate their revenue differently, but I mean, the larger problem is going to remain. The SEC and the Big Ten are going to be making more money than the ACC schools.
And didn't Bubba Cunningham kind of, reference that when he said it's about, the teams that put money and they value their sports and you can see that they invest in it. Those would be the schools that deserve to have a little bit more of a payoff, right? Just kind of a kick in the pants for those that are investing and trying to move their programs forward.
Right. That's how they see it. Now, North Carolina, obviously hasn't had as much success in football, but they sponsor more sports than just about, any team outside of the Pac-12. So they say, hey, we're investing, we're giving out lots and lots of scholarships, we're winning titles in many non-football, non-basketball sports. And, and then Clemson and Florida State are saying, hey, we're investing in football, so we need a little bit more. I mean, I think at the end, nobody's going to be happy, right? If you do unequal revenue distribution, it's not enough to get Florida State and Clemson to where they want to be. And then you're telling 6 or 7 schools in the league, hey, you got to take a little less. And they're not going to be happy. So I don't think anybody's going to be satisfied until the revenue number climbs.
Well, okay, we've heard Florida State. We've heard now North Carolina. We've heard Clemson. I think you mentioned Miami in the original answer. Who else would be missing from deserving, in your opinion, or they think, unequal revenue sharing?
Well, I've talked to a lot of TV people, and those are the 4 schools that probably are worth more than the ACC contracts worth. I've heard, Virginia Tech and NC State are probably worth exactly what they're getting, and then all the other schools, are probably worth less. And so I think you're going to hear most of the complaints from those 4 schools, Miami, North Carolina, Florida State, Clemson, as schools that say, hey, we're worth more than we're getting, and so we should get a larger percentage of the deal. I mean, those not coincidentally, those are the 4 schools that would probably have options if something were to happen to the ACC.
Do you think that that there is any way that the other schools would even go for any of this?
I think to appease some of those schools that they may. I mean, I think, but I think as I laid out, it may be from new money. Maybe keep the old money distributed the same way, but some new money that you get, maybe that gets slightly altered. Maybe ESPN finds a way to, work on some sponsorship agreements where, the Clemsons and the Florida States of the world get a little bit more than Syracuse's and Wake Forest and Boston Colleges. I think there probably are some creative ways that they can do this without.
May have lost you. Okay, hold on. We'll try to get Brian back on and get back to that same question and also his answer on that as well. Brian Murphy from WRAL had somebody on the chat room. I lost the name for. Hey, King William said he's watched that station from Durham, North Carolina for many, many years. So, all right, we'll see if we can reconnect with Brian Murphy. Mack Rhoades, Jeremiah Dickey also today down the road will join us on 365 Sports. Jeremiah Dickey from Boise State at 4, and then Mack Rhoades from Kansas City, Baylor Director of Athletics at 4:30, and maybe a few more nuggets from him that we've gotten over the past couple of years, honestly, as well. Matt Clark on the chat room, they're back and forth again, a lot of discussion about the Big 12 and the Pac-12 and the Big 10 and the ACC, and of course now the SEC. Dismissing the Big 12 teams is nuts. No one is battle-tested like the Big 12 teams. This is talking about 8 teams that could win it. Kansas didn't have the best team last year, but they were battle-tested, could make it through the gauntlet. He's suggesting that, of course, with a lot of teams out of the Big 12 and the list that I read from the article on ESPN.com. Paul, go back to what you asked Brian, if you don't mind again.
So, Brian, do you think that there's any schools that would even go for this at all?
All right. Well.
Yeah. See, that's
something's feeding back in. Whatever usually that's not the case, so we'll have to end it with that with Brian. Appreciate his time trying to join us. He's up in New York at the ACC men's basketball tournament. And that first game of the day going on, Georgia Tech and Pittsburgh with 1:23 to go. Pitt leading that game 81-75.
Yeah, I never heard the phone echoing like that, so that's a first, and not sure what's going on there, but we'll figure it out. And quite frankly, I didn't really have much more to ask anyways. I mean, this is it's an interesting story that Bubba Cunningham's coming out and speaking. I mean, it's just adding more fuel to the fire. But again, I'll use the word imminent. There's nothing anywhere close to even broaching the word imminent as far as the ACC goes because of their lengthy contract. So it's interesting fodder. It's interesting chatter, to be sure, and you add it into, all the other stuff that's already swirling, and it definitely raises some eyebrows. One thing's for sure is that this is not so much something will be solved in the next, days, weeks, even months. I mean, as far as that piece of it goes, this is something that's going to go on for probably a while. I mean, because of that contract and because of just the ever-shifting landscape. But it is of note, certainly, that the bigger brands are starting to bark, and, you line it up timeline-wise, and, the folks who feel like there's a, further consolidation is the word that we've heard used quite a bit, additions, subtractions, movements, whatever. I mean, I think that's definitely in the ACC's cards at some point, just not right this very moment, but the initial feelers are being put out there. So if you want to go ahead and stomp this fire out before it becomes a raging inferno, then the ACC is going to seemingly have a lot of time to do that and plenty of time to try and figure out a model that would satisfy all of their, all of their players. And he laid out a few of the ways that they could possibly do that. But, yeah, I mean, the TV contract's not seemingly changing. And, there's not really what you would consider, I guess, additive value. I mean, they don't appear to be like they're in the, let's go grab more territory market. If anything, they're hold on to our territory and hold on to our most important territory while it's under wraps and then, see where we go from there. But, yeah, this all just seems like people setting up chess moves. Like, this is like my question with the Pac-12 yesterday is, Kliavkoff, I guess there was nothing, major coming out of that meeting outside of just they went over the latest on the TV deal, whatever that's going to be, which is main, like, Pac people can complain all they want. If they just release a TV deal, all this stuff basically goes away, or like 95% of it does. I know it's not their fault, but, I mean, that's really what the holdup and what's led to more talk than anything is the fact that this TV deal that was supposed to be done a while ago is now getting into mid-March at this point. But, they look like they're going to stay pat as far as, movement goes, maybe outside of a couple of additions that we've talked about, like SMU, San Diego State, whoever else may be in that mix, if they even go that route. But I say that part of it to lead to, okay, and then what happens in 5 years, right? Same thing with the Big 12. And same thing with the way these TV contracts are lined up is that it's not just about like, yeah, if you're the Pac, you're trying to get the right now and like the Big 12 did, get the right now stabilized. But the 5 years and beyond that mark, I think, is still very much a mystery, or maybe that mystery is starting to get cleared up a little bit, and it's getting even a little bit scarier of how much more change that there could be ultimately. And that's down the road. But as we've seen a lot of times, that's not that far down the road.
Nope.
It's not really. It's really 5 years is really not that far down the road. And a lot has to happen in between that time period to lead up to things that could happen then. So, yeah, you're not just going to wake up in 5 years and be like, all right, all these TV deals are up. Let's start thinking about this. That's getting thought about right now. And all that talk you hear about super leagues or, Power 5 or whatever that's going to look like in the future, these are all the seeds being planted right now, guys. The ACC guys barking, the Pac-12 trying to figure out how their TV deal is going to work and what that even looks like. The Big 12 locking themselves down to set themselves up to now. They're not worried about the right now in the next 5. They're worried about beyond that 5 because they've secured the near time. Now they're trying to figure out what's beyond that. And I think that's what's scary for the Pac is in some ways is like you're still trying to figure out the right now and in the next few years, and then what beyond that. So it's a very interesting game of chess with a lot of moving pieces and a lot of players. But
it's like winning you win an election, and you get to enjoy that for about a few months, maybe a year, and the next thing you know, you talk about the re-election.
I think you get to...
And you actually have about, a year or two to get things done before all of a sudden you're a lame duck already.
I think you get to enjoy it until you, do this. Until you're I solemnly swear.
Yeah.
And then the moment, especially because you got to start fundraising and, all that stuff. So, yeah, it's kind of the same thing. So they are...
It's a honeymoon period for maybe a few hours. Yeah.
And right now it's just such a, the ACC is going to have to posture so strangely and loudly because they're stuck, and there's no other way of saying it.
From Elliot Cruz in the chat room, a lot have comments on the ACC. They're either in that area or follow teams. There is no incentive to unequal base revenue, but incentives for success is reasonable. Make a bowl, keep a portion, a higher portion, make the NCAA tournament, keep a portion, make the college football playoff, keep a portion. Now, that could be something that makes sense. Yeah. You earn a little bit more because you're the one bringing in the units, so to speak. Now, Barry Ray, Smokey, as you know, I live in Clemson territory. I can tell you they are dead serious about this unequal revenue situation.
Yeah, and of course they would reap the benefits of it earlier than anybody else. I mean, if the rest of the ACC woke up tomorrow and said, all right, it's even incentive-based performance, Clemson's like, done, gotcha, because they're already ready to go. They're loaded for bear. Everyone else is a completely different story in that conference, in that league. But, even with that, so say they take the new money and skew it the other way, it's only a fraction of the money that they want. So while they'll say oh, hey, we gave you $4 million each more a year. Great. What about the other 26?
Yeah, I mean, that's why I think it's an interesting conversation, not just for the right now, but I mean, I think really the more interesting pieces of the puzzle are the 5 years from now, and you see the moves being, like I said a second ago, being made to sort of set a lot of that. I think the moves, like the LA schools and OU Texas, were the moves that are setting it up for what eventually it turns into. And now we're seeing the fallout from those moves. And now, as the Pac-12's just trying to get a TV deal, you've also got the ACC now barking about unequal revenue sharing, and we know what the Big 12's been through. And meanwhile, the SEC and the Big 10 just sit back, and they got their expanded playoff that they'll get more teams in than anybody and more money than anybody, and their plan worked. I mean, they pulled off a plan to perfection to separate themselves as – two in their own little hierarchy as compared to the others, and everybody else is just trying to really chase that and try to close that gap as best they can. And it's easier said than done, because then you get into the discussions about how much actual TV real estate there is and how much money's moving around. That gets you into streaming. I mean, it's a very complex and bigger, issue than just where do you want to play and who do you want to play with, and on what TV network do you want to play. There's a lot that goes into all of those moving parts, and I guess it just depends on what you think the future of college sports and college football in particular looks like. But I don't know. I see like the OU Texas move on just its own, and it makes all the sense in the world. If nothing else ever changed in college football, that move makes total sense. Same thing with USC and UCLA. But I just don't think it's just those two, and then we're going to be done with it. I do feel like there's more, especially when I hear big TV network executives or former executives using, confidently words like consolidation. I just feel like we're on the starting path, and there's still a lot more to go.
All right, Patrick Crake's one of those. Bob Thompson, one of those. We've had others as well on this show discussing those who have been in the business. It was one of the guests we had was a former executive, and we're always looking at others to get their opinion to make sure we get, as we have said, somebody in the replay the other day said that you guys are looking at all this one-sided. No, I think what we have always tried to do, and I did say that, I think we went back and forth, understood it, is we want to get every possible angle or opinion there is. We've had somebody that covers all 12 current Pac-12 schools, including USC and UCLA, and somebody who covers all the other ones, whether it's Oregon State or whether it's Stanford or anyone else. We've had somebody that covers those schools. That's what we do. That's what we try to do, and also get that information in front of you.
Yeah, and, I do think that kind of our shared opinion, and I don't want to speak for my compadres here, but the thing that makes college football different than the NFL is that there's a whole bunch of people who, much like the NCAA basketball tournament, there's a whole bunch of people that if the playoff was the right way could theoretically be in this thing. The NFL is different because there's 32 teams that could be in it. And if we just have two NFLs, then, we have the Saturday, NFL or the college football that's like it, and then Sunday that is the real NFL, then it's not the same. It's not different enough. Like, the reason that Saturdays and Sundays to me are both fun is that they're both football, but they're both different, right? And so when you're watching a different thing and you're kind of going back and forth, homogenizing it to me doesn't make it fun. So, yeah, I don't want any conferences to go away. But if you ask me what I think is going to happen with the Pac-12, like right now, like they are kind of on the edge of the precipice, and I don't see 5 years from now them being able to re-justify something unless they make some kind of grand move that we don't see coming. So, yeah, I'd love for them to stick together, but I don't know what they're doing to make sure that happens, not just past the TV deal that could be coming.
If somebody thinks we're looking at one side, their minds would be blown to actually look around at what's being said everywhere else. I mean, like you're insane if you're pointing us out on that. But thanks for listening. I think it's like you're to what you're saying, Paul. It's not so much about the right now. I've said, and I have not backed off one time, I think the Pac-12 staying together and all that's going to remain the way as is. I've said that the entire time. I know others have churned the waters a bit more than that, but I've not backed down from that. I still feel that way. As of right now, I still feel like there's not going to be any major consolidation with the Big 12 and the Pac. I've never bought into that because I think, again, it's let's stem the tide for right now. Let's just save ourselves for the time being, get what we can get, make the best of it that we can, maybe add a couple schools, and then get to work on what 5 years from now. And that's what I keep circling back to. I know everybody wants like this thing right now, but I just think that this is more of the movement that's already been going on over the last couple years that's just all leading us to wherever this thing is when everybody revisits their TV contracts. And that's not fun to talk about necessarily today because that means that something's not happening right now or maybe even in the very near future, although something's going to happen with the Pac TV deal at some point. But it's the long game, guys. That's what I think it is. It's the long game.
Some of it is just getting in survival mode and trying to and then if you can get the survival mode, which is now where 4 of those conferences are, the Pac-12 will most likely get through it somehow. I don't know how or how much, but they'll if they do. And then you start working on making sure you're better for 5 years from now. The sooner the better. Here's a guy named Sporty on Twitter. I had to put this up here because, you hear about this back and forth, this anger, fans against fans. This was, to me, here's a guy, he's a Brigham Young fan, just one of those on Twitter. But the way he put this, the way the Pac-12 sometimes when Kleofkoff has mentioned that there have been people trying to throw grenades at the Pac-12. This makes so much sense, and I'm not putting this up here because it's maybe looking at the Pac-12 in a negative way. Pac-12 pulls Colorado in, right? Mm-hmm. Took a team out of the Big 12, didn't blink. Pac-12 extends no expansion lifeline to the Big 12 after Texas and Oklahoma leave. Pac-12 joins alliance that specifically excluded the Big 12 to try and force their demise.
Also missing.
And, hold on, now the Pac-12 doesn't want the Big 12 to take advantage of their instability?
Yeah, but they're also missing the part where there was almost the joining of Texas and Oklahoma.
Even well
that's
back.
what I'm trying to get to before that final answer was that was a piece of that puzzle as well that didn't end up turning into anything. And who knows how the world would look different if Texas and Texas Tech, I guess, would have been a part of that, and Oklahoma State maybe, and Oklahoma would have all joined the Pac-12 years and years ago. Yeah, I mean, how much different does the world look right now? It'd be fascinating if you could have a little time machine and go back and see just how that would have unfolded. I'll say from that standpoint, the only time I ever saw, and granted, I don't spend a lot of time on social media outside the show, but the only time I really saw that become a thing, and I miss out on a lot of trends because I don't spend much time on there, but was post-Oklahoma and Texas with the finger pointing and the ha-has, and that was, the Big 12's falling apart and then double back and laughing again of like, oh, you think we're going to save you? Oh, no, you're going to drown. With Pac-12, you're not good enough. When all that talk came in from just certain parties, and it's not like every Pac-12 fan is like that. I don't have anything against any folks. But that there was a vocal part of that pointing and laughing. And then to see a lot of the people who were pointing and laughing, then a year later deal with the same thing and be just as, taken out of the, knocked out from seemingly out of nowhere with the blow of USC and UCLA. That's when the shoe was then suddenly on the other foot, and it was the folks who had been getting laughed at that turned around and started pointing at those other folks and saying, oh, how's that feel? How's that feel? That's not fun, is it? And that's when it turned into what it turned into, because post-OU in Texas, there wasn't like there's Pac had the alliance, they were in the alliance. They were safe. They were fine. Screw you guys. And then, a year later it all changed, and now you've got these two in a fight that I think everybody else is just kind of being entertained by to some extent at this point.
All right, I'll go back to it. My talk with Jeff Smillian, who's a media mogul, and at the Super Bowl, was very influential in USC's decision to leave to go to the Big Ten. And this is a guy who understands the media dollars, and that's why he was on that board, and that's why he was one of the ones that said, look, in the long term, USC has to leave, and we'll take UCLA with us, and that's what they have to do. So USC behind the scenes and this was going on even longer, the way Kenny said it wasn't just when Texas and OU did what they did. They'd been talking about it. Texas and OU did what they did, and then all of a sudden USC thought, well, we should do that. We should absolutely do that. And then it was just about waiting for the right person at the Big Ten who was like, yep, and that was Kevin Warren. So, yeah, the Pac-12 was not as stable and as they thought they were, and historically the Big 12 and Pac-12 historically infight the same kind of way. And one thing I do want to bring up, and it just occurred to me, Smokey, you said how we've had all these people that have covered all these things. Do you know the two hardest schools to get people to come and talk sports are? Stanford and Cal.
Yep.
And it's because they don't, like the newspapers, the website, there's not a lot of websites dedicated or newspapers dedicated to covering it. Like even the rival site, you can go to, like the Alabama rival site has 40 guys that work for it. Stanford and Cal each have like two.
Well, you're right. They're not as many
because there's not as much interest, so there's not as much passion.
John does cover Stanford and Cal,
but
and we've had him on before about many things, including the Pac-12. But yeah, I even spoke with a Cal writer. I told you guys that last week. I reached out to one, and he thought the last he had heard was they still feel like they're going to get something in the mid-30s. And I don't know if that means he wasn't updated or if that was just what he's heard recently.
Okay, but I can open up the college football director that we get as writers and Football Writers Association. And for Baylor alone, there are 20 people that you can call to book a segment and talk about Baylor. For Stanford, for years, there's been less than 10. And so when you talk about passion and the way that people pay attention to your sports, it's just different over there. So there's a lot different when it comes to it. So the thing, I've always kind of felt about the Pac-12 is that you have Colorado, right, that's about to be as excited about football as they've been in 30 years, really. And then you've got Stanford who, right? They're going to start hiring more people to cover Colorado because of Dion and because of all the things. So they're in the same league, and they don't care as much about the same thing as where if you go to the SEC, they even look at, Vanderbilt, they are smaller and, less successful, but you can't tell me they don't care as much. They care a lot, but they just don't have the juice that Georgia has. But it's, so if you have all these schools that have different ideas about how things should be, I don't know if that works for you the long term.
Yeah, I think we got to be careful because I don't really know how differently the Pac-12 thinks. You know what I mean? We always do the Stanford-Cal thing, and I think that is pretty clear that they don't care as much about at least the big-time college football as compared to an Alabama or as compared to even a Kansas State. I do think that that's pretty blatantly clear and fair to say. Well, Stanford's not that far removed from having football success, even with all of their restrictions and the things that they have to deal with as compared to others. But, yeah, I mean, just as far as fiery fan bases go, you're not going to see 1,000 people named Cardinal 42 and Stanford guy that are sitting there arguing with you all day long. I mean, yeah, there's not that type of reach or anything like that. But I don't know, how Colorado really feels. I see a lot of people trying to put words in Colorado's mouth or put words in other people's mouths. But that's why I've always just, sat back and said, all this is fun and everything, but I still feel like it's all staying together because until I hear it from somebody that's, a prominent player at one of those institutions that's, possibly going to move around, then I think it's all, well, it's a guessing game, really.
Well, we just had the writer for Colorado, and he said he's never seen it like this. It's a different animal now with Dion, but you're right about the interest they have in football.
No, I'm not talking about interest in football. I'm talking about, desire to leave and go somewhere else.
I think all of them would like to stay.
Right, exactly.
They would look for any kind of glimmer of hope just to stay where they are and keep it intact. And some of them are just saying, please give us a glimmer of hope.
Yeah, that's all. They're all just saying, hey, meet this mark. And to that point, I got a tweet from TLG. I'll leave it there. I don't know your name, TLG, but shout out to you. And he passed me along the podcast that I guess Ross Dellinger had done recently, and with our buddy Billy Embody, and talking about how there's a certain. Apparently, he mentions, and I told TLG that I needed to go back and listen to this myself, but apparently he does say something along the lines of, if the deal's more than 50% streaming, the preference is not to do that. Now, I don't think that's breaking news, that wouldn't be anybody's preference, but, I mean, that kind of thing is absolutely notable, and if, that were to be the case, well, then that is somebody on the record, and that is circling back to what? What could answer all of these questions? The freaking TV deal.
Yep.
Get it done, and all this goes away, although realignment rumors will never stop. But that's all everybody's waiting on. That will answer every question. That will settle everything down. That will finalize everything for the foreseeable future. But until that thing gets done, I mean, whether you like it or you don't like it, you better learn to love it. The rumors are going to keep going on the longer that drags on.
So you have teams who are a part of a conference in the Pac-12 trying to figure out where they will be or how they stay together, and most of them, all of them, it seems like, would like to do that. What about those who are trying to become a part of a Power Five that have been on the edge before? We've discussed this in the past, and one of those names is Boise State. Their director of athletics, Jeremiah Dickey, joins us next on 365 Sports.
Richard Carr, Buick GMC Cadillac, they are the people that you can count on for great deals, for great customer service, for great repairs, for great everything. All you got to do is head on over to Richard Carr, Buick GMC Cadillac, and they will hook you right up like they hooked me up with great customer service and great repair. Haven't bought my vehicle at Richard Carr, but because of the way I've been treated, that will be my first stop. Hopefully not too soon, because Cars are rather pricey. I'd like to drive what I've had for a little while, but anytime I need a repair, that's the place I'm going to go to. And when I do eventually need to get a new vehicle, that's the place I'm going to go to. And if you're in the market for a new vehicle right now, they've got a Texas-size selection. Over 150 vehicles are on the lot and ready to drive home today. That includes luxury SUV like the 2023 Buick Envision, luxurious on the inside and outside, but not with a luxurious price tag, a smooth and quiet ride. Right now, qualified buyers can get special lease payments with $5,000 down cash or trade at $269 per month and save thousands on a purchase. And you can get into that more, of course, by going over or giving a phone call to the dealership and talking it over with their great sales reps. But they also have dozens of Sierra trucks. Right now, qualified buyers can save thousands on 2023 GMC Sierra SLT 1500s or get special financing on a new 2023 GMC Sierra truck. So as far as the new stuff goes, those are a couple of the options. But again, you can dive further into details with the great folks over at Richard Carr. Perhaps you're looking to buy pre-owned. If that's the case, they've got plenty of quality pre-owned cars and trucks in stock as well. Many of them under $20,000. They're affordable, they're thoroughly inspected, and they're ready to finance for almost any credit rating. And perhaps you're just looking like me to get a little bit of a repair. Well, if you want to drive your car or truck a little while longer, head on over to their service department, award-winning, and it's standing by to keep you on the road. Go to richardcar.com to see their service specials or set an appointment for quick and reliable repair. In business for 23 years in Central Texas, Richard Carr is run by proud Central Texans. Log on to richardcar.com today. Call now or go see them now off Highway 6 at the Imperial exit.
All right, Craig, thank you very much. Thanks to Richard Carr with all the sponsorship of the Baylor segments as well. And we're now joined by Boise State Director of Athletics, Jeremiah Dickey. And it's great to have him on. We've had Jeremiah on a couple of 2 or 3 times since he was named the AD at Boise State. Thanks for being a part of the show. Obviously, there's a lot going on when it comes to realignment. We'll get into that. But what has it been like to watch, at least because of what's current right now in college basketball, your basketball team have the success it's had so far?
Well, first, thanks for having me on, guys. I miss you, and it's good to catch up. I'm so proud of our team. You know, I've been here 2 years, and I had obviously watched from afar and knew enough about Coach Wright, but he's just tremendous. And I got to be careful because I don't want anyone to take him, right? Yeah. He's just doing an incredible job, and it shows you, you know, with a little bit of investment and intentionality and strategy, what ultimately it could be. And seeing what the season was last year and how that's dominoed into this season, you know, and I'm tired of hearing about the bubble talk. This team deserves it. They've earned it. And obviously we have, you know, a game tomorrow, but just really proud of this team, and the future is very bright.
Jeremiah, so when you say you don't want people to take you, you're saying he's just good enough. Is that how you tell people so you can keep your coach?
Right. You know, it's hard to keep my excitement down. I mean, to be a part of the conversations and, you know, it's something that, you know, I just really appreciate. You know, he has a ton of experience. He's helped me as a new AD, and I lean on him heavily, and he just getting to know him. He's everything I thought he would be plus more. And, you know, and the staff that he's put together, you know, Burns and Duryea and you know, Bergenson. I mean, it's just it's an amazing crew. And, you know, they're in it for the right reasons. They're here to serve our student athletes. You know, we're a developmental program, and we take pride in that. And, you know, it's something to see how these guys have grown. I mean, look at his son, you know, an all-conference player this year. And it just, you know, shows you, you know, when you put in the time, effort, and energy, something great's going to happen. And we've seen that now 2 years in a row. Last year, it seemed like it was a surprise, and we didn't believe it was. And we've done it for, you know, for my second season. And that's a testament to that staff and those student athletes and the team behind the team that's supporting them on a daily basis.
Jeremiah, you talk about energy and just enthusiasm and effort and putting the work in, and you know, you've certainly done that. I mean, I've seen, you know, on social media, you and your staff and the fundraising efforts, and just, you know, trying to improve facilities and just trying to get all the details right as well. It seems like there's been some pretty tremendous reception, even here as of late, you know, as far as support from alums. And just how has that process been? I mean, kind of take us into the shoes of an athletic director who comes in, is trying to get to know people, and, you know, hey, you know, I also, you know, need your help in a way, need your support. Just what's that like, building up that foundation the last couple of years?
It's been awesome. As you guys know, I'm relational, and that's important to me. And obviously, I wanted to, and not necessarily turn the ship because the things that had happened here in the past were bad in any way. But with the changing landscape of our industry, I knew we needed to do more. And in many ways, being at our level, you got to do more with less. And coming in and to be able to really define the direction and tell a story around what we're doing, why we're doing it, and where we're going, and to listen. And, a big part of being an AD is, I don't know everything. A big part of it was coming in and listening to these people that have been supporting this place, well before I arrived, and hear what they wanted out of this, and to have that align with my expectations. It's just a really cool process. And we, early on, I'm very vocal, obviously, and trying to connect as much as I possibly can. I think there was a lot of, yeah, right. I'm not sure he's going to be able to get this done, but we'll see. And now 2 years in, it's built a lot of street cred, and that's probably less to do with me and more to do with my team and how they've really embraced this. And people are stepping up. Doubling our donor base, the number of gifts that we've gotten, how we're monetizing operations, how we're looking at name, image, and likeness. It's maybe more, because I'm new and don't necessarily have all the experience. I'm open, I'm approaching everything eyes wide open, and I'm looking at everything as an opportunity. I'm less concerned about how we got here. I'm more concerned about where we're going. And people have embraced that, and we're starting to see progress on our facilities. The $300 million playbook for success, people thought that was a pipe dream, and it's like, all right, that's fine. This is how we're going to do it. And, and now we're moving forward with Oxygen connected to men's and women's basketball, which will be huge for recruiting. And then we're moving forward with the North End Zone project. And now people believe. And that's what you need as an athletic director. You need people to buy in and believe. And sometimes early on, I had to believe for them. But we're now to the place that, it's just been a really cool part of this process, and I'm excited about what's next.
Has anybody from a Power 5 conference contacted you about a membership?
At this point, and I try to be consistent, I control what I can. And, obviously we're trying to navigate these uncharted waters, and I'm making a lot of calls and trying to stay in touch and have my ear to the ground on what's happening and what potentially could happen, and because of our current partnership with the Mountain West, which is outstanding, and think very highly of our brand and who we are and what we represent. And out of respect for them, I haven't been as vocal, maybe like others have. At the end of the day, I'm going to control what we can, and realizing as an AD and even our president to a certain extent controls very little in this process. We're going to continue to work the plan that we put in place and best position ourselves. And at the end of the day, my job is to do what's in the best interest of this institution. That's why I was hired. I'm going to continue to do that, and we're going to continue to define our own expectations. And whether we ever get into the Power 5 or not, that doesn't keep me up at night. We have a Power 5 mentality, and we are going to compete at the highest level, and we are going to be relentless in that process. And that's my promise to Bronco Nation.
Jeremiah, the 12-team playoff starts next season in college football, and for Boise State, a team that's had success in the postseason, in big moments, in big bowl games, how, I wouldn't call it imperative, but how important is it that early on in that playoff that Boise State makes an appearance and has some success in the first few years of it?
Is it important in general? Yeah, I think it's important because we want to compete at that level. We have competed at that level. And when you look at our past successes, we are in that conversation. Once again, what I worry about is what I can control and how I can better serve Andy and our student athletes and our coaches and the team behind the team, because, I firmly believe everything counts, everything matters. And, I look at the landscape of college athletics, and I look at the transition in terms of realignment that's taken place. We are in an extremely positive position moving forward, and that excites me. And so, my job is to drive interest and tell our story and monetize this as much as I possibly can, because we're investing every dollar back into this program. And I'm really proud of Andy and excited for in 2 years, him and I starting together almost on the same day. We've come a long way in 2 years, and the future is very bright, and we're going to continue to grind, and we've adopted that 1-0 mentality, and that's, I'm most concerned about Washington, kicking off this season.
Jeremiah, I know the media, and one of them, but can turn the decibel levels up by 10 on anything, no matter what, and a lot of things can get blown out of proportion. But it does seem like it's kind of a chaotic time in college athletics, in front of the camera, behind the scenes as well. Not to the extent of like people running around with their hair on fire, not knowing what to do exactly, but is it as chaotic, so to speak, just in terms of people trying to find their footing, not only now in the present, but also 5 years, 10 years down the line? Sure, some are secure no matter what, but I think you, like with most of the others, are in that group of like, we'll see what happens and we're trying the best that we can. Is it as chaotic as it appears, or is that overblown, you think?
I don't think it's overblown. This is, and maybe I'm biased because I'm living it, this is a very uncomfortable and chaotic time for athletic directors. And I don't care if you're in the Power 5, Group of 5, whatever level you're at. So much is changing, and we're redefining the rules as we go. And, our jobs as athletic directors is to be out in front of that. And whether you're projecting, predicting, whatever it is, we have to move, and we have to continue to look forward. And I view it, maybe it's a competitive advantage for me, being a new AD, and I still consider myself somewhat new compared to some of my counterparts. I'm less concerned about how we got to this place. I'm more concerned about how I, adapt and best position our institution. And I view it as a competitive advantage because, I'm coming in without blinders. I'm open to any and all ideas. And in many ways, I love the idea of defining our own expectations. And we're able to do that because, those that have come before haven't necessarily defined them. And so when you look and consider as an athletic director navigating transfer portal and name, image, and likeness and collectives and, the monetization and professionalization of our sport and what's going to happen when sports gambling, comes and it's already here, but when institutions start embracing it and states start embracing it, it is very challenging, but there's opportunity in everything, and we're going to continue to find it.
Is it almost to a point where you're catching up to then have to go fast again because of things moving so quickly?
Yeah, I mean, I think in general, and maybe unfortunately for my team, but, I move at one speed and it's fast all the time, and so I think that helps me to a certain extent. That's the drug for me, taking something where there aren't a lot of solutions, at least, on the surface, and really having to dig and put this puzzle together, sometimes blind. And, but what I do know is lack of movement, doesn't allow you to pivot. And we have to move, and we have to make real-time decisions, and we don't always have the information at hand. And that's, that can be debilitating in some cases for some, but for us, we're going to throw it at the wall, see what sticks. And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. And we're going to pivot and go a different direction. And I feel like if we can continue to do that, and really define the expectations, and we've already somewhat seen it here where people are starting to take some of the things that we've done, like name, image, and likeness, and how we're approaching, the monetization of our department, because every dollar matters, and it's invested back into our student athletes, and we, want to compete at the highest level, and those are our expectations, and we're going to continue to do that.
Jeremiah, Florida passed a law recently basically pulling out almost any guardrail from schools working directly with NIL companies or, people who want to make NIL deals with athletes. How do you feel the state of Idaho is doing when it comes to setting up things to make NIL manageable for the universities?
I think they've done an outstanding job because they've stayed out of it. You know, at the end of the day, you know, and not that I'm a control freak, but I want to control as much of the process as possible. And that's how we've set up our name, image, and likeness. And we've done some things that whether others feel comfortable or not doing it, you know, we have the backing of you know, our attorneys, and as we navigate this ever-changing landscape, you know, I don't necessarily, you know, right now, guys, my preference is for us to control the collective. You know, why are we bringing others outside in to serve our student athletes when my job is to know what's in their best interest, and 100% my job is to serve them. And, you know, I don't like the idea of, you know, giving up that level of ownership in that process, especially when some of these companies are taking 10, 15, 20, 25, even 30% from these kids. You know, if this is the sandbox we're going to play in, then let's figure out what's best. And I think there is a better path forward. And I'm very fortunate. We have a collective, and the guy who runs our collective is, you know, he's a former Bronco and worked in our department for 17, 18 years. And he understands the rules. He very much cares, and he's going to operate the right way. And, you know, not everyone is, you know, has that type of setup. So I'm grateful for our legislators and our office of general counsel and our government relations team. And, you know, we've stayed ahead of it and are in daily conversations on what's next and how we can best navigate this. And it makes me proud to be a Bronco.
Yeah, I'm with you, Jeremiah. It seems like one way to deal with any, you know, middleman type of shadiness or people getting screwed over, or whatever, would be to just eliminate that part of it. I mean, it just seems almost unnecessary. I know that you have to have, you know, somebody guiding the way, but that seems to be where a lot of the problems is, in that gray area. But, you know, on that topic of NIL, I did see where, you know, you guys have some trading cards, you know, out there for Boise State fans, with current athletes. And I just look at it from, you know, all the talk about NIL. I don't think it gets talked about enough. Like, how cool is it that, you know, the current star point guard or volleyball player or quarterback can have their jersey in the pro shop, or also have trading cards? Just how cool is that as an athletic director who's seen the way that college athletics has operated for so long, to now see athletes getting opportunities like having their own trading card while they're at Boise State that Boise State fans can collect, and there's no worry about penalties or anything like that. It just seems long overdue.
I agree. And I think it's awesome because, you know, some of my first memories as a kid, and if you remember back in the day, and it was at UTEP, and other schools did it, I collected UTEP trading cards as a kid. And that was my first introduction to college athletics. And I collected cards in general, and my boys are getting involved in it. And to see, you know, their friends and how they've embraced it. And it's such a great tie-in, you know, and I think that was the intent behind image and likeness initially. And it's somewhat taken on a life of its own in this pay-for-play model, and whether they become employees or not. And that's a whole different conversation. But, you know, as an AD and you know, looking at the landscape and, you know, to tie in to not just football, but all of our sport programs, even spirit and traditions or cheer and dance, even they have cards. And it's cool. And it allows me, you know, I'm always thinking, you know, trying to strategize around this. Well, we're building our future Broncos, you know, and this ties into our camps, and it ties into them getting their parents to attend our events and games. And, you know, it's there's purpose in everything. And for everyone to benefit off of it, I think is a real, you know, it's really positive. And I see others trying to do it, and there's others who have reached out. You know, they reach out daily to us, and how are we navigating this? And I think it's great for our student athletes. The other thing that I think is really cool, and you don't hear enough about, but, you know, we are still holding on to this academic, you know, portion of the student athlete for dear life. And, you know, we're taking this name, image, and likeness, using it as an opportunity to better prepare our student athletes and teach them to be fiscally responsible and about insurance and contracts. And, you know, there's a lot to be taken from this that can ultimately help them in their next chapter of life. And that's something I took from Mack in terms of preparing student athletes for life. And that's something I think is really important. And we can utilize these opportunities to do that.
Jeremiah, there's on the chat room, Retired Stockbroker, that's the name on the chat room. Please tell Jeremiah that Phil and Christopher, ex-Phi Slamma Jamma cheerleaders, said hello, congrats, and the University of Houston misses you, helped us with a lot of the ticket issues. So that's somebody that watches us because of the Houston connection now to the Big 12 and our coverage of college athletics that wanted to send you that note.
That's awesome. Please tell them hello, and I remember them, and I'm so pumped for Houston, having been there for 7 years, and what Coach Sampson and those guys are doing, specifically in basketball right now, and having been a part of that process early on. It's really cool to see, and so please tell them hello. Thank you for that.
Can you draw on that experience when you were at Houston with Mack to what you're doing now at Boise State?
Absolutely. That is the exact template. I'm just trying to do it a lot quicker. And that's part of the challenge, but there's so much opportunity. Before, when we were at the University of Akron, to hear Houston was a sleeping giant, and obviously you knew about the Southwest Conference and Phi Slama Jama and their tremendous history. But to get there and there was so much low hanging fruit, and through Mack's leadership and Hunter Yurachek at Arkansas, really able to create that foundation, and it was cool to be a part of that process. And I lean on those experiences, the successes and failures at a place like Houston. It very much is driving our strategy and how we're moving forward here.
So when you watch what Kelvin Sampson's doing, because I know Mack was that decision, that was a decision to bring him to Houston. When you watch what he's doing, is that kind of like part of your blood too?
It absolutely is. I'm passionate about this. I'm not sure there's anyone in our industry that's doing it for the salary or the money. We're in it for a greater purpose, and to be a part of that process. And even pre-Coach Sampson, Coach Dickey, and no relation, but what he inherited and how he started to create that foundation. And then everyone, your job is to take it to the next level. And Coach Sampson, man, like, I can't say enough good things about him. He had a very specific plan and purpose in everything he did. And, he is elite, and you've seen it play out in action. And I'm so pumped for those guys, because, what they are today is not what they were when they arrived, or not what that program was when they arrived. They were that way, but they had to get, a very football dominated school at that point to a place that basketball was a priority and could do something epic. And just like I told you before, sometimes as a leader, you have to believe for everyone else. And Coach Sampson had to believe for everyone else. And he had to battle and fight and claw for what they are today. And now he has that community behind him, and there's not a more deserving person, and his family and his son. Really proud of them. And I did very little. I happened to be a part of a team behind the team, but, I really give Mack and Hunter, I believe, was on our staff at that point, and the sport program administrator for men's basketball. I give them a lot of credit. I believe Coach Sampson was with the Houston Rockets at that point, and to see what it could be and how that dominoed into their practice facility and redoing, their basketball arena and the support that they've gotten. I mean, if you haven't been to that arena, it's beautiful. And, I'm very much looking forward to, and it's probably in the back of Mack's mind, because he was a part of that, with what Baylor's building. And, it matters. And I'm in some ways, whether, I deserve very little, if any, credit at all for what Coach Sampson and those guys are doing. But I take a lot of pride because, just like I love the Bears, I love the Cougs. And I have a lot of friends in Houston, and very happy and excited for them.
Your attendance for the game against San Diego State just over a week ago was phenomenal. I think it was a sellout, 12,208. I'm not sure the capacity at Extra Mile Arena, but you had well over 12,000, I think even almost 12,005. To look at that and see how many people were there, besides the obvious, like, adrenaline rush, what was that like? What was that atmosphere like?
It's, I sit there, and it's hard not to get emotional about this, the work being done behind the scenes and some of those long days and nights, and as proud as I was as a team but you just sit back and, it justifies, what you ultimately sacrifice. And, I remember when I first got there and looking at this blank canvas and thinking about what if, And, to see it play out and to sell out 3 games this year of 12,000 plus and to average, I don't quote me on this, but I believe we were top 10 in terms of attendance because we have a very large arena, not just in our own we were very good in our own conference, but top 10 in terms of Pac-12 and even some of the Big 12 schools. And we'll put that out at some point on social, but I'm really proud of our team, and it's how we, you plan the work the plan. And you sometimes don't see it, but you just keep taking steps forward. And last year we got to the end of the season. We sold out at a game. We won the regular season and we said it. And really what was cool about that moment last year was it wasn't me saying it. It was my team coming to me saying, and here's what we're going to do next. And it was one of the more prouder moments as a leader. And then we get to that San Diego State game, and it was insane. I've been to a lot of basketball games. It was the loudest crowd I've ever been a part of. And how that game ended, and the crowd very much mattered, and it tied into the story that we've been telling, that everything counts, everything matters. And sometimes a crowd can be the difference between, 2 or 3 baskets. And so to see that play out and us to get that win against a ranked opponent and to provide that experience for our fans, for our student athletes, for our students. That night I told the president, that wasn't just a win in basketball. That was a win for this institution. We just created future Broncos. And that's what we're here for. We are the front porch, and we have a tremendous story to tell, and we are of value, to this model. And to see it play out, I'm a hugger, and I hugged a lot of people, whether they liked it or not, I don't know. But I hugged a lot of people at that game because I was so grateful just because you saw it play out in action, and that's powerful.
Good for you because we know what you represent. We're proud of what you're doing. Hopefully things just keep getting better, bigger, better, faster, stronger for you and the Boise State faithful, and obviously know if someone can lead them to another level, it's going to be you and those who you hire as a part of your staff as well. We appreciate your time, Jeremiah.
Thank you guys for having me on. I miss you guys, and good luck in the tournament, and go Broncos.
Yes, sir. You too. Jeremiah Dickey, Director of Athletics at Boise State, with us on 365 Sports. I saw a lot, even former players at Boise State, and of course you hear that a lot of that's recency bias. That's the loudest crowd I've ever heard, but I saw that coming even from those who were covering the game, who were not a part of the Boise State media, who said the same thing. During the time we had him on, one quick note in breaking news. You want to go ahead and tell it, Craig?
Yeah, this came down like probably 10 minutes or so ago, but Jim Boeheim is done at Syracuse. He is heading off into retirement officially. That news came down via the Syracuse Twitter feed. Also see various reporters, confirming the information as well. But Jim Boeheim, no longer Syracuse head basketball coach. Looks like Adrian Autry stepping in. And so that's 47 years now coming to an end. Have to give it up at some point. There's been lots of talk and speculation about, his future and all that. And I think we just even mentioned like yesterday or the day before, he had made a comment that was kind of vague about what might be coming, or maybe I saw that somewhere else. But now we know. Now there is some finalization on his career, and after 47 seasons, Jim Boeheim out at Syracuse.
There are a couple of Baylor stories with Syracuse. Paul, I know you covered one of those games, but Boeheim has had kind of a prickly relationship with the media, and a lot of that has happened this year. And he was asked a lot about whether he's coming back, and he said that this was on my time. This was my decision.
I would not just call it with the media. I would say with other people not named Jim Boeheim.
Yeah, fair. And he's kind of a curmudgeon and hell of a coach.
A curmudgeon's like Mr. Wilson, like grumpy but lovable. But I'll tell you right now, he's a bully. That's what Jim Boeheim is.
He actually remember it was who was it that had the friction with a newspaper, on-campus newspaper reporter. Who was that? Gino did that one time. Ariyama had that, and a couple of others have had that as well.
Every college basketball coach ever, maybe.
Yeah, but he had a little back and forth with that. I thought it was over the top, and he took them. They were among the Blue Bloods in college basketball. His record there is phenomenal. The national championships, could have been 4 or 5 of them, right? Could have been many of them. They won it all in 2003. And Carmelo Anthony, of course, was the guy that led him to that national title. A couple of other finals losses. And at Final Four, Boeheim took him to 5 Final Fours in his time at Syracuse.
Yeah, he's a great basketball coach. I didn't find him to be a very likable guy just from the far extreme outside. I mean, you talk about the issue with the reporter like I guess that was a couple years ago now at this point. He was making fun of the person's height. Had the obviously very well publicized and very unfortunate car wreck that was, talked about widely at the time. But just kind of, I don't know, I guess just sort of, I don't know that it ever really went away around him, but I think it's just one of those things like just people moved along, I guess, and moved on and dealt with that accordingly as I suppose as best they could. But, there was obviously a lot of talk and a lot of heat about that as well. But, yeah, I mean, a tremendous college basketball coach. And I'm sure if you're a Syracuse supporter, then you probably have a much different view than just some dude out in Texas who's, just casually observed for, the majority of his career. But, yeah, tremendous coach. And now we'll see what Syracuse does other than just this initial pivot and where they go ultimately, whether it's Autry or some big widespread coaching search. That'll be, obviously a pretty highly coveted job, I would imagine, but some big shoes to fill.
A lot of people who think that they ought to go outside the program to get breath of fresh air. Autry right now appears to be the one they have targeted. When we come back, he worked for Mack Rhoades, Jeremiah Dickey. Mack Rhoades, Baylor's Director of Athletics, next on 365 Sports. PettyClinicLowT.com. Dr. Kent Petty can help you become the high-performance man that you want to be, need to be, used to be. Feel the way you did. Father Time can take care of sometimes a lot of things in your body, and one of those is testosterone. Your levels can drop. Your testosterone levels drop, and there's a lot of other things that can be affected by that. Sleep habits, your energy, you just don't feel the same. Your sex drive, your performance, not the same. That's what can happen with part of what happens, and 1 out of every 3 men have symptomatic issues of low testosterone. Dr. Kent Petty, PettyClinicLowT.com. Contact he and his staff, and they will set you up to get your blood work. They'll check the blood work, all of the levels, including even things like PSA, cholesterol, whatever else is a part of it, but also your testosterone level. If it's too low, Dr. Petty can put you in a program to increase your testosterone levels so you can become the high-performance man you used to be, need to be, want to be. PettyClinicLowT.com.
With so many companies and policies out there, it gets so confusing shopping for insurance, and I never know if I'm getting the policy that's right for me. Luckily, I met the team at the Niche Group Insurance Agency. With the Niche Group, you can go to one company and get access to coverage options from many insurance carriers, and you get to speak to a real person about your specific coverage needs. With the Niche Group, I know I'm getting the right coverage at the right price. If you need insurance, talk to the experts at the Niche Group at 1-800-258-8302.
Riverbend Liquor and Wine, Lakeshore Drive and North 19th Street, right behind the bank, is a hidden gem in Waco. If you're a fan of bourbon, especially local Texas bourbons, that's where you gotta go. Balcones, TX, Devil's River, whatever it is, they've got it. Riverbend Liquor and Wine, plus the best selection of craft beers in Waco, seasonally churned out throughout the year. Whether it's spring, summer, fall, or winter, Riverbend Liquor and Wine, best selection of craft beers, a speedy drive-through window, and excellent customer service. Find out more on Instagram or just go by and see them. Lakeshore Drive at North 19th Street behind the bank.
How did Edward Jones become one of the biggest financial service companies in the world? By not acting that way. Financial strategies, one-on-one advice, it's a big difference. And that's why Brad Wilson, your Edward Jones financial advisor, makes sense of investing. Experience the difference for yourself. Brad Wilson, 250 Sharon Drive in Woodway, 254-776-4337. Edward Jones, member SIPC.
Don Humidor, your home with a 48-foot walk-in humidor with the elite cigar brands from around the world, including the #1 cigar of the year, Aging Room Cuatro Nicaragua. Plus, they have the great brands like Macanudo and Artur Fuente, Rocky Patel, Aston, and so much more. CBD, great for sore muscles, aches and pains, sleep, Vita Dreams, and anxiety, mild depression, general health and wellness. Their staff very knowledgeable on the subject. If anyone is curious about CBD, ask Carol and Ashley. Don Humidor in the Townwood Shopping Center off Valley Mills in Waco.
Shorty's Pizza Shack at 12th and Bagby is a homegrown, locally owned pizza place that's out of this world. Everything from the dough, the sauce, the sausage topping is made fresh in-house. Not to mention the amazing pizza pillows, the chicken wings are to die for. Try the Sikkim sauce, chili cheese fries or tots, plus great specials on food and drink every single day. Shorty's is also the perfect spot to watch the game with your friends. Shorty's Pizza Shack at 12th and Bagby. Tell them Paul sent you by.
Boozers is the wedding ring store and more. If you're ready to get engaged or already married and want to upgrade your wife's ring for a special anniversary, Boozers is the place to go. With the largest selection of premier quality diamond engagement rings and wedding rings in Central Texas. They have 7 cases with over 300 styles of rings from top designers like Natalie Kay. Choose from yellow, white, or rose gold, plus beautiful top quality loose diamonds. With an in-house jewelry, they can also custom make anything you want. Bring in a picture or drawing and let Boozers create your one-of-a-kind pendant or ring. They can even use some of your old gold and diamond jewelry to create something new. At Boozers, you'll find a great selection of quality timepieces, and Boozers is the place for expert watch maintenance and repairs too. They specialize in expert Rolex watch repair for fine jewelry, watches, custom work, and more. Go to Boozers on Valley Mills and Lake Air Drive in Waco.
Boozers, the wedding ring store and more.
Welcome back to 365 Sports, powered by Sikkim365.com. Our weekly segment with Baylor Director of Athletics, Mack Rhoades, is brought to you by Edward Jones Investment Brokers, Ben Erlinson, Brad Wilson, Cam Heathcott, and Chuck Verno. Edward Jones, making sense of investing.
Big 12 men's basketball, women's basketball tournament in Kansas City. Big 12 Commissioner Brett Yormark is about to address the media with a session there that's going to be a short media session to just answer a few questions. We kind of all probably know what they're going to be. Mack Rhoades, Baylor Director of Athletics, with a tough act to follow. Jeremiah Dickey, Boise State AD, was just on with us. Mack, the ball is in your court.
I'm glad you had Jeremiah on. I know he's doing a fantastic job at Boise State, and certainly wouldn't have expected anything different. So, when I use the word proud, I can say that, that's the right word for me. When I think about him, I'm really proud of him and certainly happy for him and Elizabeth and his family, and they're doing great things in Boise.
Mack, are you in Kansas City?
I am.
Okay.
Yes.
Any chance you guys have had any conversations as ADs or presidents or anything else about the future of the Big 12?
No, we haven't. We the athletic directors are scheduled to meet tomorrow morning, and we've got a full agenda, and we start at 8 a.m. and I'll be walking out at 10:30 a.m. whether the meeting is done or not, and get over to the arena for our 11:30 a.m. But a lot on the agenda. We'll talk about a variety of things, and so looking forward to that. And may head to the arena tonight for the 2 games tonight.
Let me ask you a question when it comes to a lot of focus on realignment is in football. And I know that Gonzaga has been brought up in basketball, and Brett Yormark has mentioned that international flavor and the popularity and maybe even extra revenue. Is there any chance if the Big 12 was expanding that it would be only in basketball, or would that have to be included in that would be football?
I think, well, to answer that question, I think this is what you're asking. I mean, I don't know that we would we would ever take an institution that offers football at the FBS level and men's basketball and only take them in men's or women's basketball for that matter. Now, would we potentially consider an institution that, doesn't play football, that has a really, really strong, basketball programs when we think about, women and men, absolutely. And the commissioner, I think, has mentioned it or touched upon it. And I would agree. And I think we all do that, basketball's been, undervalued, so to speak, up to this point in time. And so I think, in the future, and when I say future, I would say, 5, 6, 7 years from now, when new media deals are negotiated, that there'll be a little bit more value or higher value, certainly on basketball.
Mac, do you feel that basketball can drive more of revenue or of expansion than people think? Especially with, I've heard Brett Yormark mention the international thing. I mean, it is huge everywhere. And how do you get into that market, and how does it expand?
Yeah, it's a really interesting question, and I think you have to be careful where you spend your time, where you spend your emphasis. Is there room for international basketball connection, etc.? Yeah, I do think there is. How you do that, I think needs to be really, really thoughtful in where you do that. And so, just like the NFL plays a game in London, right? Does the Big 12 need to play a game or games, internationally? Is that Mexico? Is it somewhere else? And I think, part of this, Paul, is about just expanding the brand of the Big 12. And are there any natural connections? NFL in Mexico, right? Well, is that an opportunity for Big 12, football and basketball in Mexico? And so those are the things that we, certainly have had conversation about, and we'll have more conversation about. And when we think about return on investment, value back, does that make sense? And quite frankly, I think your TV partners are going to have a big say in whether that makes sense for them. And then again, does it twofold help expand and build the Big 12 brand?
Mac, can you explain how different the level of urgency maybe feels as an athletic director? I mean, it seems like we were just talking to Jeremiah Dickey I asked him, is the chaos just media driven, the stuff going on behind the scenes and in front of the scenes as far as just, survival of the fittest, realignment, NIL, all that stuff? And he's like, no, it's as chaotic as it appears to be for an athletic director. But from a Big 12 AD standpoint, is there a little bit, I guess, of an alleviation of some of that urgency because you guys were able to square away a TV deal, get all settled in, or is that as high as it has ever been because you're having to constantly look at, all right, what's 2, 5, 7, 10 years down the line?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's some inner peace, regarding Big 12, future of Big 12, that, right now, we've flipped in the last year to 18 months as being perceived as very unstable to now maybe, one of the most stable of the Power Five. And so I think there's that component, that piece that you have, but the industry itself, everything that we're dealing with, it is absolutely chaos. And when you think about mental health, when you think about transfer portal, when you think about name, image, and likeness, when you think about all of the NCAA deregulation, volunteer coaches to full-time coaches, all of this, right? Meal deregulation, student-athlete travel deregulation, Alston. Like, it is coming and has come all at once. And, we're all trying to navigate this as best we can, first and foremost, institutionally, and then certainly as a conference. And it just seems like, this is just a different time than I've ever experienced, and just in terms of the compounding challenges that we're facing. It almost seems or feels like this relentless pace, and I think you're seeing it impact the industry. You've seen some coaches walk away. I think you're going to see and have seen some athletic directors walk away. It's just it's a really volatile time. We certainly try to see it through a lens that, hey, this is also a time of great opportunity for Baylor and how we find our place, how we find our niche. Really felt like we were in that really good place, not satisfied, knowing that we still needed to get better, but then now all of a sudden, all of this other stuff changes, and it's almost as if we're in the process of even reinventing ourselves again. And I think, it's how many times are we going to have to reinvent ourselves? Like, is it going to be, multiple? And I think we've talked about it on this show. I don't know that there's any more best practices. We're absolutely making those as we, creating those, developing those as we go. So it's a really interesting, challenging time. And if you let yourself, right, you begin to feel really, really bogged down and maybe at some time, just almost like hopeless. And I would say for us, again, we've tried to look at it, hey, this is a really, really unbelievable opportunity for Baylor to shine. And, I'll go back to, I really believe that Baylor, that intercollegiate athletics needs a Baylor. And so we're going to continue to try to be proactive in terms of challenges and navigate them as best we can.
Mack, is there, since you said like best practices, you don't really have that list anymore that you can do. Is it more this is ethical and this is not, in the way that you have to go through things with the ever-changing world?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question, and I don't think for us, it's ever, there is absolute when you think about ethical and unethical, and so it's always going to be, whatever we do is ethical. Where and this is probably hard to explain, but where I think some things in the past were black and white and maybe absolute, just in terms of processes and how you handle different situations. I just don't know that one size fits all anymore, and it's almost on a per case basis. Now you base all of those decisions and the way you navigate and handle them still on your core principles, but I'm not sure that you can have the same answer for everything anymore. And this idea of it's more gray than black and white. So, and again, that's really, I always have to be careful talking in this manner, because what you never want to allude to and even crack the door open to is that we're going to sacrifice our core principles and doing it the right way, because we're not going to. And, I think for many of us, not just me, but I think for many of us, if we ever get to that point in time where you absolutely have to sacrifice your core principles, value system, our Christian beliefs, in order to be successful, it's the only way that you can be successful, then I would say that many of us won't be in this business much longer.
Mack, I don't know how much on the agenda tomorrow is what else you do as a conference moving forward. Obviously, there's something out there that's kind of the 800-pound gorilla in what the Pac-12 might do, what might be available to them and or not. You've made comments about the future if there's an opportunity. Brett Yormark has, Jamie Pollard has, Gene Taylor has, others have as well. Is the conference stuck in a way when it looks at their future until something is known about what the Pac-12 has in their future?
No, I don't think it's stuck. To be honest with you, I think the hold pause mode was really I think more about future of UT in Oklahoma.
Mm-hmm.
And so now that we have definition clarity there, I think that certainly allows us to really formulate how we're going to move forward as 12. And so, again, regardless of what happens to, conferences around us, Pac-12, maybe right now specifically, we're in a really good place, and we're not putting anything on hold in terms of the future of the 12. And so, we've spent a bunch of time, and we should, and we'll continue to spend, most of our time and focus on the 12 and how do we build the 12? How do we make this the best conference, that we can possibly be? And, going back to what I said originally at the beginning of this interview, I think we've really flipped. I think if you look at it, it's a little bit remarkable that we've gone from one of maybe the unstable to a conference now that's looked upon as being really, really stable, one of the most stable amongst the Power Five. Now, that could change tomorrow, and certainly we're not foolish, and we're not sitting here thinking that, hey, we're good to go for the next 15 years. We've got to continue to build and get stronger and grow stronger. And we've talked about it, and you mentioned the other athletic directors about the Pac-12. I want to make something really clear, and because I think it gets lost when we talk about this. I don't know one athletic director in the Big 12, including myself, certainly including the commissioner, that's sitting in a room together or when we're on a phone that is rooting and hoping that the Pac-12 dismantles. Nobody is wishing that. And those are all great institutions. They're friends. And sincerely, truly, we wish them the very, very best. Now, if something happens with their ongoing negotiations and they're not in the best interest of those institutions, then absolutely we need to be prepared for that. And and I think that's what we've been doing. And so we'll see how all of this plays out.
I know you're losing your voice and you need to keep it for the games, hopefully all the way through the weekend as well. Have other people from other conferences like the Big Ten or the SEC, people in the business, whether it's ADs or whoever, said anything to you about how the Big 12 did dig itself out of what was a very difficult situation and commended you, or is that even something that's ever really discussed?
Yeah, we appreciate that question. I've heard from other ADs in other conferences, and one, I think initially they were like, wow, really surprised. That's not close to what we thought that you all would garner when you think about the new TV media deal with both, ESPN and Fox. And, they've been very congratulatory and supportive. And so, certainly appreciate those phone calls.
Thank you, Mack. Appreciate your time. Good luck, Baylor men and women this week in Kansas City. Mack Rhoades, Baylor Director of Athletics, with us on 365 Sports. He's on today because yesterday traveled Kansas City, as you mentioned. There's a lot to chew on right there. And he kind of clarified again. Sometimes people mention what he said 2 weeks ago or last week, and a lot of clarity. And by the way, also, others have said, hey, you've done a good job that maybe we're also looking at the possibility of plucking somebody if the Big 12 fell apart.
Yeah, well, I mean, he just said it pretty definitively right there that nobody's sitting around, plotting their demise. They just have to be ready. Just like everybody else had to be ready when what happened with the Big 12. Appears that only one conference really was, and that was the SEC, the ones that took them apart, and then everybody else kind of sat there and wasn't interested. But, yeah, I mean, the Big 12 knows that if it wants to continue to survive, it has to be aggressive. So that's all that they're doing. Yeah. Now, does that mean you have to talk to other schools and find out where they're at? Yeah, probably a little bit, but I don't think it means that you're sitting there hoping that their TV deal doesn't get done.
Yeah, that's not the way some people are trying to portray this whole thing. They're trying to make it out to be super predatory, and I realize that making public comments could be looked at that in a certain light, but it appears pretty clear what the situation is. Announce your TV deal, have all of your teams be satisfied with that, and we can all move on. And that's not on the Big 12 to do that for them. So we all wait, as we have been waiting and continue to wait for the Pac-12 to finish their TV deal, whatever that's going to look like. He just made it very clear, Arizona Wildcat Mack Rhoades, by the way, that they're not wishing ill will or the death of any conference. I believe him when he says that. And I believe him when he says that they are simply just sitting back like everybody else and watching how the Pac-12 is going to respond and move forward. And it's like, if a girl you were into suddenly becomes available, you like to be ready for that opportunity, right? And I know it's probably not the best comparison, but she's been dating somebody else, and now she's suddenly, it's not as ideal of a relationship anymore, and maybe she's available. You're going to swoop in there and try to land the girl, right? And I think that's in so many ways probably a very simplistic view of it, but that's kind of what it is. Like, hey, I'm not going after her, but if she's suddenly single, I'm going to go try to talk to her. What am I, stupid? So, yeah, that's how I view it, at least, and not trying to go ruin a relationship or anything along those lines, but certainly just sitting back in the shadows, if you will, and not even so much in the shadows. I mean, he's very public and on this very public show on a very public website about what's going on, and that's kind of how I felt about it the entire time. There's been a side of folks who want to paint it as this super predatory, trying to poison the well and all of that. Look, we said it earlier, the Pac-12 schools, to our knowledge, to most people's knowledge, don't want to go anywhere. So again, what does this all come back to? The Pac-12 TV deal and announcing that and getting that done. And as I think it was John Canzano put out, they made good progress on that. I'm just at this point, and I believe his reports because he's pretty locked in, but how much more progress do you need to make to finally get to a point where there's no more progress, there's just, you're done with it. You know what I'm saying? I mean, if you've been making progress slowly but steadily, I'm just fascinated in what's the procedures that are going on that is leading it to now be this many months along. That's to me, actually, the most fascinating question is just what has taken so long. And maybe in the grand scheme of things, this has just been more public than others, and it hasn't taken longer than normal. But then if that's the case, then that's on the people who spoke publicly who kind of insinuated that this was going to be done. Oh, remember Christmas got in the way. Remember when Christmas delayed the Pac-12 TV deal announcement, guys? A couple months back, Christmas got in the way. So then it was that, and now it's March 8th. Was St. Patrick's Day going to delay it next? What are we waiting on? So that's what I'm curious to hear eventually when this is all said and done is, all right, what was the many months in the making towards whatever this number and whatever this distribution and all of that is. But, yeah, there's a very simple way for Pac-12 realignment talk to go away, as far as an exodus of schools, and that's for the Pac-12 to finally finalize their TV deal. And then we can all move on with our lives. But, yeah, the Big 12 is going to sit back, and if that TV deal comes rolling in with all of the good progress they've made over these many months, and it's not enough or good enough, to see a very bright future, then, yeah, they're going to be ready to land the girl. And it's really that simple.
All right, when we come back, we are only 2 hours into our 3-hour show. Also, Paul Mills, basketball coach at Oral Roberts, they punched their ticket into the big NCAA tournament by running the table in the regular season, then winning the Summit Championship. He's next. This is 365 Sports. Alan Samuels, Dodge Chrysler Jeep Ram Fiat. The Jeep Celebration event has started, as the month of March, of course, is headed here in this opening week. Get a 2023 Jeep Grand Cherokee Laredo with total values of $5,500 on second and third row options. 2023 Jeep Gladiator Sport with $5,000 in total values. That's also available right now. So the Jeep Grand Cherokee, an incredible vehicle. The Jeep Grand Cherokee Laredo, total values of $5,500 on second or third row options, and the 2023 Jeep Gladiator Sport with $5,000, up to $5,000 in total values. That's just for what they have when it comes to Jeep. There are values available for the month of March. In the month of March, Ram Truck Month going on as well. So go to the dealership, look at the inventory, ask them about the values for Jeep and Ram trucks. Jeep and Ram. Alan Samuels, Dodge Chrysler Jeep Ram Fiat. Go by and make sure you tell him I sent you. Tell Ted Teague, the general manager, you watch us every day, because he does. Alan Samuels, Dodge Chrysler Jeep Ram Fiat.
Pizza, burgers, and Bears football. There's no place around Waco that serves them all other than Bubba's 33. Come show your green and gold and enjoy some of Waco's best food and beverages while watching your favorite team, the Bears. When real Bears fans get hungry, Bubba's 33 is the #1 spot for ice-cold drinks, hand-stretched, stone-baked pizzas, and bacon-infused burgers. Join us for indoor or patio dining. Bubba's 33, Waco's restaurant and proud supporter of Baylor Bears football. Sick 'em, Bears.
You want to know why Stonewood Dental is so successful? Listen to what happy customers have to say.
It's pleasant. It's different than any other dentist office. I really feel like they care. And it's not that you're here for 2 hours waiting on someone to take care of you. It's quick and easy, and I bring my kids, and my kids love being here too. They really love the treasure box. Staff is really nice and accommodating, real friendly. You feel more like home. It's not sterile looking. Everybody has their own personalized rooms with decorations and decor, and they'll even have a blanket for you when it's cold. I've recommended people to actually come here, and they are patients now. I really love it here. It feels like family.
Learn more, stonewood-dental.com.
At Ideal MRI, we feel blessed to be part of the Waco community. We're a small family business here in Central Texas. At times like this, the cost of healthcare has never been more important. And unfortunately, significant illnesses and injuries still occur. And that's why Ideal MRI is open and here to serve you through this difficult time. So if you need an MRI, ask your doctor about Ideal MRI. You can schedule online in minutes at idealmri.com or call 833-IDEAL-MRI.
Waco Custom Marketplace is your hometown grocery store with a full-service butcher shop and bakery. Hi, this is David Smoak. The butcher shop can take your customized orders for seafood, pork, and poultry and custom cut your favorite steaks from bacon-wrapped fillets to T-bone to bone-in ribeyes. Cut specifically the way you want. They have Norwegian salmon fillets, catfish fillets, sliced ham or turkey and lunch meat, variety of cheese available, and several options of sausage links, fresh chicken breast or whole chickens, sliced bacon, pork chops, ground beef, marinated beef, and chicken fajitas. ribs, and always large briskets available, plus fresh vegetables. So the great product, customer service, and family tradition of the Bauer family continues at Waco Custom Marketplace, open Monday through Saturday. A full-service butcher shop and bakery available. Waco Custom Marketplace, 425 Lake Air Drive in Waco, or WacoCustomMarketplace.com.
Let Camille Johnson Realtors guide you seamlessly through the process of buying your dream home or selling your current one. Commercial, farm and ranch, or residential, Camille Johnson Realtors can smoothly and successfully lead you through any transaction. With a team of 28 experienced agents who are excited about serving you, Camille Johnson Realtors services the entire greater Waco area. If you're in the market to buy or sell, contact Camille Johnson Realtors, 104 Midway Center in Woodway, or find them online at www.camillejohnson.com. Camille Johnson Realtors, elegant, charming, warm. Welcome home.
This is 365 Sports, powered by Sikkim365.com. Enjoying the show? Hit the like button and subscribe.
We will hear from Paul Mills, head basketball coach at Oral Roberts. They have punched their ticket, an unbeaten regular season, and then won the conference tournament. Also, we'll have some quotes from Brett Yormark at Big 12 men's basketball tournament in Kansas City with Max Olson, who's a part of what we do on 365 Sports. There's one of them. The strength of this conference in basketball, I think, is unrivaled. And then he discusses Gonzaga. We'll get to more of that in just a little bit. We're now joined by Paul Mills of the NCAA tournament-bound Oral Roberts basketball team. You're doing it again. When was the last time somebody ran the table during a conference schedule and then won the postseason tournament? How often does that happen?
Well, it is rare. We are the only team this year to go undefeated in our conference of the 32 conferences, so it's rare. But in the 41-year history of the Summit League, Scott was a part of it when he was at Valparaiso. It's been done twice, and we did it this year, but South Dakota State actually did it a year ago as well. So it's been done 2 times just in the 41-year history. It just happens to be in back-to-back years.
Paul, for you and your coaching staff, I know like rosters change. I know you've got some guys that were there a couple years ago when you made your great run in the tournament. But for just you as a coach in this institution, how much does that help navigate what's ahead for you guys in the next couple weeks?
Definitely helps. I mean, we have 4 of our top 6 from the Sweet 16 team in 2021. 3 of those guys are starters. We're starters on that team, and we've been able to add pieces. We have a young man who transferred to us from Kansas, and Bill Self coached at ORU, and he told me, he said, Paul, I did not want to lose him, and he turned out to be an all-conference player. We have a 7'5" young man from Arkansas, and he's played in the SEC, and so I have a 2-time All-American at the point guard spot, Max Aceman. So I have really talented players who are experienced, and that's kind of what allows you to win 30 games in a season.
You guys dominate it, and then you win it, but you're in a league, and unfortunately there are some that no matter how good you are, how dominant, if you get 30 wins or not, you have to win the tournament too. Can you try to describe that tension, or I know everyone has pressure, but what's that like knowing that?
Yeah, it's a great question because there's never been a 29-win team that didn't make the tournament. So if we would have lost in the championship game, we would have been the first team to ever win 29 games and not make it. But I'm on speed dial with Joe Lunardi. Hey, where are we? Well, tell me what you think. And he's great. He just gives me his opinion. But I'll give you an example. Yesterday we were up 31. We were up 51-20 at the half. And you would have thought we were down 10 because that is the tension. You realize if you don't carry this out and you don't play well for the next 20 minutes, you could possibly find yourself on the wrong side of Selection Sunday. And I've been on that side. It's not a fun feeling. And I also know the feeling of waking up Sunday morning knowing it's Selection Sunday, anticipating where are we going in what I consider the greatest event in sports.
Coach, I can't recall where I saw this. It was just yesterday, though. Somebody wrote about how it seems like 10, 15 years ago in the tournament that there wasn't as much of a need to have to win the conference tournament for teams that were really good mid-majors, outside. And now, as to your point, to Smokey's comment, you kind of have to no matter how many games you won. Do you think that's something that everybody kind of needs to reanalyze, is the sort of line that the smaller schools have to meet to even get themselves in the tournament versus maybe the way it was a few years ago?
Yeah, I could go off on this, just having been at this level, now for 6 years. But, we played the fifth toughest non-conference schedule in the country. So it wasn't as if we were ducking people. It isn't as if our 30 wins are against bad teams. And by the same token, when you go out and you play a schedule and you have a net ranking in the 30s, that's how the NCAA quantifies teams. And if hey man, you know what? Y'all are in the 30s. I don't think you should penalize people because they're poor and reward people because they're rich because they get more opportunities. We're one of 7 schools, Baylor being another one, in the country that do not have a quad 2, quad 3, quad 4 loss. And so if you're like, man, y'all have won every game outside of some quad 1 opportunities, but we only had 4 of them. So should you penalize us because we don't get the same number of opportunities that rich schools do? So is that how we want to move as a society and penalize poor people and reward rich? And you know what? The answer may be yes. But I do think that people need to take a long look at that, because the reality is that we've beaten teams in the NCAA tournament. We've won games as at ORU to advance to the Sweet 16. So, in my opinion, I think you have to look at this stuff, and instead of taking, hey, we're going to take, I don't know, what does the Big Ten have, 14 teams? We're going to take the 10th team out of this league. How do you compare that relatively to us? And I don't know that you can say, well, they have this many wins against this level of competition, when the reality is they had way more chances because of the league that they're in.
Coach, and it's also not, I think people maybe don't completely understand scheduling. It's not like, okay, you guys said, okay, we have 4 of those this year. Let's get to 7 next year. That you can just call 3 more schools and they'll be like, oh, yeah, sure. Come on to our place and beat us.
Yeah, it's not really how it works. I look at what Alabama pays teams to go play them in football. And I said, you'd have to, if you know you're going to go in there and take that loss, you're going to have to pay me 7 figures, right, to go in there. And so teams have to go get games. And if they're going to go spend money on games to fill their schedule, I promise you they're not paying schools that they think is going to be a competitive game. They're trying to work through kinks, get lineups and rotations correct. So they're trying to get questions answered through live competition. So they're not trying to do it against, for us, a player who is a 2-time All-American. They would rather do it against somebody else. And, I appreciate the opportunity that other schools have extended to us to come play them. But, even if we were the worst team in the country and Scott said, man, would you play us for our opener just so we can see where we're at? He wouldn't play me just because of the relationship. So I get it. I understand how schools go about scheduling, but when you're on this side of it, it's a little bit more difficult.
If you have success the way you've had it, not if you have, you've had success. You had the team, what was it, a couple of years ago that made the great run. Yeah. Should that not, for example, there's going to be a team or 2 this weekend on Sunday that's going to get in. Their resume is iffy, but they have a name. So why shouldn't Oral Roberts, if you have steady success and you start to show you can do this over and over again, get that kind of a lean too?
Yeah, no, I agree 100% with you. I think you have to evaluate opportunities. And again, I don't know that I personally wouldn't want to go down a road to where, that person doesn't get the same number of opportunities. And because of that, that we're not going to extend them in NCAA tournament invite, because right now I can name you 4 teams in the top 30 of the net who do not have a true road win in the Quad 1 all year. And so, and if I named them, you would be like, really? I mean, like, they're high-level programs. Playing road games is hard. And so for poor schools who have to go on the road in order to play Quad 1, they have to play true road games. And, I mean, I can't name Baylor's schedule off the top of my head, but I don't think Baylor played a true road game in the non-conference. I know they played Virginia and UCLA on a neutral court in Vegas, but I don't remember them playing on somebody else's court. Maybe there was a home and home that I forget, but it's really, really rare for schools to do it. And you know what? There's a reason teams don't have true road wins against Quad 1s, is because they don't even go play them until they get to conference. And then, you know what? It's hard to win on the road.
Yeah. Well, Paul's going to bring up a one that Scott's not going to be real thrilled we had to bring it up.
They did play Marquette. They did play Marquette.
That's right. And you know what? Listen, Marquette is really good, right? And I remember I saw the score, and you know what? Scott and I talked like 2 days later, now that you say that. That is the first time that he had to take Keontae into that environment. So you could tell a talented freshman whatever you want. If they've never been in a road environment, it is difficult. And you can try to explain it, and I'm just, you know, I remember the 2012 year, we started off that year 17-0. And our toughest game was at BYU. And BYU was okay that year. But we were really good. And I just remember, man, this is hard to do, to go on a road to win. And if it's your first time, we were fortunate to have a little bit of experience with that group, and Quincy Acey and Pierre Jackson, guys who've been around. But if for Keontae, I mean, that's his very, very first time. And you don't want to go in there without everyday John either, because you need as much help as you can get.
You have a young man, and you brought him up earlier with Max, who's averaging in his career over 20 points a game. How good is he?
He's terrific. You know, 2 years ago when we were in the NCAA, he led the country in scoring. He was number one. And we've been able to bring in some people alongside of him to help him kind of ease his burden. And I just told him, I don't know that you'll lead the country in scoring. And he said, well, my assists go up. I said, absolutely. He said, that's what I want to do. He's not worried about individual accolades. I mean, he's been a 2-time AP All-American. He's such a phenomenal young man. He's about the right things. But, I mean, I think when you get that many accolades and you're known as a scorer and you get asked to dial it back for the benefit of the team and you're all in on that, that's what I enjoy seeing, watching the confetti fall last night and guys holding up the trophy and cutting down nets and watching it all come to fruition. And there has to be trust on both ends. As I tell our guys all the time, we are mutually coaching each other. I know you think I'm coaching you, but you are coaching me. And there is this give-take in this work together trying to get to the same endpoint. And he has dialed back some of his abilities from a scoring standpoint in order to help the team from a passing standpoint.
So do you know what seed you'll be? Do you kind of get slotted in because of who you are and where you're from?
Yeah, you know, I talked to Joe Lenardi this morning. You know, he's kind of the expert, and my guess is we're at 12. I think we could probably get to an 11, so then you would play a 6. You know, I was talking, you know, if we're at 12, we'll end up playing a 5. Scott, when did we talk? Sunday? Yeah, we talked Sunday night. And he was like, don't, like, mess it up and go to a 13 or a 14 or, like, you know, get to a 15 seed and just barely beat people because I don't want to play you. And, yeah. And I said, we'll try. We're trying to win as much as we can, bro. And, you know, Jerome told me the same thing. So hopefully those guys, I think they'll both be in the top 4. They'll be in the top 16. We'll see how it gets slated. You know, well, Aldo comes Sunday, but hopefully I don't have to see them or deal with them. Well, and they're not even in the same region.
Well, I know you watched when they played in Waco earlier this year. I think by the time they got to Manhattan, things were a little bit different. So the first wave of emotions was gone. But was that gut-wrenching for you to watch?
You know what? I talked to both of them. I think Jerome, I asked Jerome to tell me what it felt like. And for him, I think he said it was bittersweet. One, because he knew how hampered they were injury-wise, and he just knew that they didn't have a full deck. And at that time, they had lost some games in a row. And he's, for Scott, I mean, that's not a fun feeling to add misery onto somebody's Saturday. If you don't have a game on Monday, I'm just telling you, those Saturday losses are awful. Because I don't know how football coaches do it. I couldn't sit with a week for a loss. Great thing about basketball is you're going to play like 2 or 3 days later, and you can get this taste out your mouth. And so Jerome just felt so bad because he knew he was adding misery to a team that was already won and lost a few, but at the same time was suffering injuries. And they didn't have, their full deck of guys. And then they started to rattle them off. So the second time I said, how'd you feel? He said, I didn't care about that when they had their whole group. I think that from where they were and just where their relationship, it's just so close. But at the end of the day, everybody has a responsibility to your players, and you're going to get them prepared as best as possible. I don't enjoy watching them play each other, but I get it.
Yeah. Well, for years, everybody would ask Coach Drew, why didn't you schedule a game with Bryce? Why didn't you schedule a game with Bryce?
No.
Yeah. If it's that hard for him with Jerome or with you or with Coach Driscoll or Grant or anybody, how much harder would it be with his actual flesh and blood? No, I think people should totally get it right now.
I need the money. I was begging Jerome to play, and Jerome was like, "No way." And so no, it is. It's really hard. And in fact, I may be stepping over my boundaries here, but we had a game with Vanderbilt when Bryce was there, and Scott was like, what do I have to come out of my own pocket personally in order to not play this game? Because it was previously scheduled with Kevin Stallings. And when Bryce took over, he was like, I'm not doing it. So I think if there was ever any money that had to get paid in order not to play, I think Scott would have came out of his own individual pocket because he was not going to play a game against Bryce.
Paul, you were on staff, right, with Scott. I know you were when they played Syracuse. I don't know if it was once or twice or how many times. Jim Boeheim is no longer the head coach at Syracuse. I know he had the great run. You could kind of see this coming. Anything you remember of the zone, which you guys did a great job with? Anything in particular about Boeheim you want to share?
Well, I'll tell you, when we made that trip, Damon Carter, who's now on staff, Tweety was a freshman. And we went up there, and at that time we flew commercial, so we'd drive up to DFW. But all our luggage got lost. And so we go up there, and we are an hour before tip-off. Syracuse has given us their road uniforms, and they've given us practice gear. I think there are pictures of us practicing in Syracuse practice gear. And we don't have our uniforms. And we're about to play in their whatever their opposite color is, and they were playing in their white, so we may have been in orange. And about 30 minutes before tip-off, one of our managers had flown on a separate flight. It brought up a separate gear, and we were able to get in ours. But I remember just how generous they were. 47 years. I mean, Scott's now been at Baylor for 20. And you're like, wow, 20 years. Boeheim 47, that is absolutely incredible. When we were all together in the Sweet 16 in 2021, we were all in the bubble. So, I'm always seeing Scott walk the hallway. You see everybody there, and Syracuse was there. And so just to walk around another Hall of Famer, there's already Hall of Famers running through there, but just to sit with Scott and listen to Coach Boeheim talk, and because there was a lot of camaraderie that went on during that environment. He's just such a class act. I know he kind of puts up a hard demeanor, but I'm telling you, behind closed doors, that is as nice a man that you will ever meet.
Good to hear that. Paul, congratulations. Good luck moving forward. We'll be rooting for you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, guys.
Paul Mills, Oral Roberts men's basketball coach. They ran the table, won the tournament. They're going to be locked in one of those teams you don't want to play. And maybe if it's just the first round, you don't want to have to play them if they get through the first round and move forward. with what they've done. Oral Roberts, appreciate his time. We have some quotes from Max Olson on Brett Yormark. You want to get to those?
Yeah, I'd like to get to that. I also want to mention, though, about the Eddie Lampkin situation with TCU.
Yeah, it's getting to be
When
weird.
I first saw that story come down a little while ago, it was just at least on the surface, appeared to be, a matter of an undisclosed injury or something off the court or just, who knows? Just wasn't thinking anything too nefarious about it at all. But in the time since, there's been some screenshots of text messages, I guess, that Eddie Lampkin's had, and also his mother as well, Jack Wright. There's a couple of screenshots, I believe, of his mother, I guess, going back and forth with Jamie Dixon, I believe. I hope I have that right. But regardless, there's been a little bit of that come out, and I still don't know what the exact story is, but it's a lot messier than just Eddie Lampkin stepping away from the team and it just being, like a slight break. It appears his time's done at TCU, period. Just done. There's talk in one of the screenshots about, I believe it was Jamie Dixon basically telling his mother, we'll let you, hey, go get in the transfer portal, and basically just saying that's the extent of it. And, I don't know that she responded that well to that, but certainly she and her son, a little bit more extreme reactions and not seeing, I guess, this as just some sort of a clean, handshake exit, a little more messier than that, but it's hard to also speculate or know too much about what's going on. It's just, it appears, the gist of it is it just appears a little bit messier than on the surface, just a clean exit, and it looks like it's pretty fair to say that Eddie Lampkin, this is not one of those that he'll be back for March Madness.
No.
He's done at TCU.
It's not just a little hiatus.
Is the best way to sum it up. So that's obviously very newsworthy and really unfortunate for TCU basketball.
Absolutely. A banger inside. There have been games when you've wondered where he was, and there could be a little bit behind that as well. There's, in the premium section, a thread on a lot of what you just brought up, and it doesn't look good whatsoever. Will be interesting to follow that story with Lampkin, Jamie Dixon, and also TCU. 2 games, of course. The first one tips off tonight. Now it's 6. We want to do this before the break. Then John Machota on the Combine, Cowboys, and much more. Here's Max Olson on some quotes from Big 12 Commissioner Brett Yormark. Before the tournament, of course, the strength of this conference in basketball, I think, is unrivaled. Yormark, I think it was critical as far as the rights extension getting done early. We live in such an unpredictable world, and it was important to have some clarity and stabilize the conference. We're in a very different place than we were 3 or 4 months ago. On expansion, we're focused on it, and we're exploring every and all possibility. If there's a chance to get better, it's incumbent on me as commissioner to explore those opportunities. Even more, in our new deal, Fox becomes a player in basketball. That just gives us another shot in the arm as it relates to more exposure, more marketing for our members. On expansion targets, it's got to be a good cultural fit first and foremost. Obviously, we look at geography. We want to be a truly national conference from a brand perspective and geographic footprint. I like Gonzaga, obviously a great program. My focus right now is to see what happens throughout our industry. There's a lot of moving parts. I continue to have conversations with Gonzaga. And then on linear versus streaming, based on where we are as a conference today, we needed the biggest distribution possible. We need the biggest platform for promoting and marketing our member institutions.
Yeah, that's linear. Prove it out to be that. So they, that if he does nothing else, like he could quit tomorrow, and he did probably as much as any conference commissioner in the situation could have done with getting that TV deal secured. So as he continues, it'll be interesting to see what's next for the Big 12. I do find that he is comfortably discussing Gonzaga. Like, that's not that, a lot of times, well, what about Gonzaga? And you're like, they're really good. And then he kind of moves on. But we have talks of, it becomes a general question. He's very openly discussing Gonzaga.
Yeah, it's more than
I
first
don't know
date.
that that's anywhere imminent, but that's a lot closer and more realistic than any Pac-12 school joining the conference in football, basketball, and whatever else. To me, I think if you're putting odds on any Pac-12 school or Gonzaga being the next member of the Big 12. I wouldn't put odds on any of it because I don't roll the dice like that to begin with. But if I had a fat stack that I wasn't worrying about sweating too much, I'd feel pretty confident in placing a marker on Gonzaga, going to the Big 12. If you had to say, like, what's more likely, that would be the most likely. That's the one I would feel the strongest about. But it's not a done deal by any means. It is notable, however, that he is speaking about them as openly as he is. And a lot of that other stuff, I think, is just, a lot of the same things he's basically said before, whether at Big 12 Media Days or when he was doing his campus tours and all of that. They're up for whatever. They're open for business. They are not rooting for the downfall of anybody, but if you happen to have a downfall, they will be there to pick up whatever pieces they see valuable and will be ready to do so at a moment's notice. And that's just good business. That's not predatory. That's just being prepared for an opportunity. And, as far as the basketball piece, I think we're all still curious as to how much they're looking at could be generated that's not already. And need to see that play out a little bit more outside of just being a stellar basketball conference, because that can change really quickly. That can change with just a couple coaches leaving, and going elsewhere. So they're in a really good spot as far as that goes. But, yeah, now is the time to maximize that and leverage that as much as you possibly can, because you are arguably the top dog in college basketball right now.
All right, here's also a college football story. LifeWallet CEO John Ruiz saying he'll sue the NCAA following the Miami sanctions. Said his argument against the NCAA will center on classifying him as a Miami booster. Says the classification was wrong. Pete Nakos with On3. The NCAA did not respond to a request for a comment. A law expert told On3 the case could call for a declaratory judgment.
Well, I guess he is. If he's not given money directly to the University of Miami, he would not be a Miami booster. He would just be a company who hires Miami players to do advertisement.
What?
Potato.
Yeah, what difference does it make?
Well, legally it does, because if he's never given money to Miami, the University of Miami, if John Ruiz has never written a check or has not classified, he's not a member of the boosters, all the foundations, all that. So if it's a loophole, but legally, that's why billionaires become billionaires, because they surf through loopholes.
Yeah.
That's what they do. So the NCAA might have found themselves, while he's surfing through a loophole, saying, well, he's a booster, and while they're not wrong, in a grand sense, technically they are, because he can be Mr. Well, actually, okay. I just make these deals with these people.
Yeah, if his track record's any indication here recently, that'll be another loss for him. But who knows? Maybe he did find a loophole that works out. To Paul's point. But I guess my main thought on John Ruiz is, back when all this NIL stuff first started, I think my biggest issue with it was, I don't want to know the John Ruizes.
Yeah, you said
I
that.
don't want to know these grown adults behind the scenes who are pulling the strings and getting the money and doing all that. I did not want them to become playable characters in this college football video game. I don't want to know them. I preferred it when we pretended like they didn't exist. And here we are. And how many freaking headlines has this guy in the past year been a part of? And that's just enough of him already. A great Miami Athletics supporter, whatever. Let's all pretend like you having the Cavender twins over to your house wasn't really recruiting them, which we all know is BS. You're lying through your teeth, and everybody knows you are, but you've got legal loopholes that technically you're not wrong, or technically you're not this, although the NCAA did say, no, that was crossing a line, clearly, which is what he's now responding to. But yeah, this is what I did not want to see, was when we started to have to know the types of John Ruizes that are involved, and I'd much prefer that we go back to where we just pretended like this wasn't really going on, or at least we just put it in the hands of the schools so we can wash our hands of this, and he can go behind the scenes where he and all the others belong.
Well, if I were to draw a picture of a big Miami pompous jackass like John Ruiz, if I was doing the police sketch artist of it, and I didn't know who he was, but I saw him do it, and I'm starting to draw, it would come out John Ruiz. He fits that mold, Mr. Miami. Miami's a very I can't use the term I just thought of because it's really dirty, but star happy city. They like big glitz and glam
LA
and
South?
stars. Yeah, LA and Miami are
not quite
the same, but like
it's a little...
Miami's very front runner city too. Like, so, I'll just give you the example of the Marlins. When the Marlins have won the World Series those 2 times, man, everybody in Miami, which is full of baseball fans, by the way, everybody in Miami loves the Marlins. When the Marlins are how the Marlins normally are, I can sit behind home plate for $19.
365 Sports saying that he has bought season tickets. Does that put him in the realm of a booster?
Yeah, I don't know, man. I don't know. Like, he might be the coolest guy in the world, off camera. But this is what I did not want to see happen was, all of a sudden these types of guys, popping up and becoming names and being a part of the story along with the athletes and all of that. Like, hey, you help land, like I said, with the Cavender twins or whoever else you want to mention. You get them deals, man, props to you. Like, that's great. The athletes deserve it. That's awesome. But I don't care to talk about you. Like, I don't care to have you as part of the Miami narrative. But he is, and obviously that's had some effects, both good and bad already. On the one hand, you landed the Cavender twins, and social media-wise, that's been exceptional for you, I would imagine. But at the same time, it's also got the NCAA knocking at your door, and now you're dealing with that issue. So this was bound to happen, and if anything, if you were placing a marker on the horse that you thought was going to be the best shot to win the who gets in the NIL trouble circles first, he would be the guy. Because you know what? I can't name any other people, for one.
Yeah.
Because he's the most out there, again, and public and now known, and this is all of what I was wanting to avoid.
Every big shot in Miami wants to be Scarface without the cocaine.
Yeah,
I mean, that's kind of like, that's kind of their, I promise you that half of them, when they were in college, had a Scarface poster on their wall. And then when they get to that point of like, well, I'm not Tony Montana, I'm not a, say hello to my old friend guy, but I like to, flaunt like that. Believe me, they do. I mean, it's just, if you've never been to South Beach, and even if it's not your thing, I would like you to go. Don't stand in line, but maybe get in line for a club, and then ask the people in line what the cover for the club is. And when somebody tells you $50 to walk in the door, before you like spit giggle or just pass out, go, well, what's happening in there? They'll give you some kind of, this random person is having a meet and greet tonight. You're like, I don't get it, but that's Miami. That's how it goes. And like, well, how much is beer? $38.
Yeah. That happens in a lot of the
but that's how it is.
Yeah,
so.
That could happen in New York too, couldn't it?
Well, it does. Yeah, but Miami is the one that's like, that's what they like it. New York pretends like that's not their deal.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But Miami's like, no, that's our deal, and you better know it.
Okay. All right. We're only 24 minutes away from the tip-off of the Big 12 men's tournament opening up. Texas Tech, West Virginia, then Oklahoma State and Oklahoma. We've tried to give you a ton today of numerous stories, but we will come back. Yep, I know. We'll come back with John Machota. The NFL Combine is over. His summary and thoughts, not just on what Dallas might be or could be looking at, but also what's happened with the quarterback market around the NFL, and this is 365 Sports. Waco Custom Marketplace, their live crawfish has gone down. Not the amount available, but the price per pound. It was $4.25, I think, about 2 weeks ago when they launched it, $3.50 a pound now. Orders must be placed, though, by 6 o'clock tonight, so you can call them, or if you're listening to us, however you are, watching us, however you are, and you're driving, so be careful, then go by there at 425 Lake Air Drive and get that order in now. You can place your order for 30-pound bags of live crawfish at $3.50 a pound and have it by 4 o'clock or after 4 o'clock on Friday or on and during the business hours on Saturday. So call to order or go by there, $3.50 a pound, live crawfish, 30-pound bags of live crawfish, Waco, and we had a discussion in the chat room about a crawfish boil. There you go, 425 Lake Air Drive in Waco.
In our logo and advertising, we say we are people that you can count on. What does that mean? It starts with providing a quality vehicle and quality service at a fair price. But it also means we do what we say we will do, and we treat people fairly with respect. It starts by hiring great people, good local folks who work hard with a caring attitude. Our employees are the real reason we are people that you can count on. Put us to the test and see for yourself that at Richard Carr Motors, we are people you can count on.
TFNB Your Bank for Life is the official local bank of Baylor Athletics. Find out why more Central Texas are making TFNB their bank for life. Sign up for our Edge checking and savings accounts to earn interest or cash back. With 5 convenient locations and an award-winning mobile app, banking has never been easier. TFNB, your bank for life. Member FDIC.
There are 26 letters in the alphabet, over 600,000 words in the dictionary, and just 3 of them said together can change everything. Let's order pizza. Those 3 words lead to dough made from scratch and 3 fresh signature cheeses that blanket golden crust in a heavenly melt on Marco's Pizza that'll blow your mind. So visit marcos.com to order and stop by Marco's Pizza in Belmead, China Spring, Woodway, and in Robinson. Marco's. Pizza lovers get it.
Riverbend Liquor and Wine, Lakeshore Drive and North 19th Street, right behind the bank, is a hidden gem in Waco. If you're a fan of bourbon, especially local Texas bourbons, that's where you gotta go. Balcones, TX, Devil's River, whatever it is, they've got it. Riverbend Liquor and Wine, plus the best selection of craft beers in Waco, seasonally churned out throughout the year. Whether it's spring, summer, fall, or winter, Riverbend Liquor and Wine, best selection of craft beers, a speedy drive-through window, and excellent customer service. Find out more on Instagram or just go by and see them. Lakeshore Drive and North 19th Street behind the bank.
One size fits all. That may be all right for an adjustable belt or cheap sunglasses, but when it comes to your financial needs, no one wants a one-size-fits-all strategy. Ben Erlinson, your Edward Jones financial advisor, knows that his most important goals are yours. That's why he takes the time to understand your needs, knowing you. That's how Edward Jones makes sense of investing. Ben Erlinson, 100 North 6th Street in Waco, 254-759-8533. Edward Jones, member SIPC.
In Texas, there's pea-size hail and baseball-size hail. Guess which one hit our house? We didn't even know where to begin, but we called our Texas Farm Bureau insurance agent, and he was so reassuring. He knew exactly what to do to get our house back into shape and our lives back to normal. Now, we're even more thankful for the roof over our heads.
Stop by and see our agents at one of our 3 McLennan County locations.
Coverage and discounts are subject to qualifications and policy terms and may vary by situation.
Welcome back to 365 Sports, powered by Sikkim365.com. It's time for our weekly segment with John Machota of The Athletic, brought to you by Pioneer Steel and Pipe, where customer service is their main focus, and best in metal, steel, and pipe for large or small projects, with 2 locations in Waco and Bryan. Family owned and operated since 1943.
John Machota, theathletic.com, with us on Wednesdays in the 5 o'clock hour. NFL Combine is over. Cowboys have tagged Tony Pollard, and those are some of what's the news and notes from the last week or so. John, thanks for your time. Anything from the Combine that, or 2 or 3 different nuggets that stood out to you?
I mean, I'd say some of the bigger headline things would be the fact that Jerry Jones says did not count them out from making some type of a big move. As pessimistic as I feel like I've gotten over the years, I'll believe it when I see it type thing, but I know that was one of the bigger headlines that come out of the week. And then the other one would probably be that, just the differences that Mike McCarthy had in his offensive philosophy from Kellen Moore's and where he'd like to go with the offense in terms of maybe running the ball a little bit more and trying to protect the defense from being on the field quite as much, and then also to try and find ways to cut down on turnovers with Dak Prescott. So you hear that and you're just kind of thinking, okay, well, what's this offense going to look like? Because you still need to score points if you're going to make a deep playoff run. So I don't know how you're going to run the ball more, but then also score more points. And I think we all know that, or at least we all should feel, I feel like that, they need more offensive playmakers. And so I think the expectations from inside the star are a little bit different from outside the star. And then inside, it's they're not that far away. And on the outside, I think most people look at them as, you guys got to make some, some type of a big splash in free agency or via trade. And while Jerry says he won't count that out, I don't know. I don't come away from there thinking that that's like, something that's certainly going to happen. And then the other one I should actually add is the Ezekiel Elliott. I didn't think that they would be as committed to Zeke going into Combine Week as they are with me coming out of Combine Week. Just not just his salary number, but just the fact of like his play declining, and then obviously putting $10 million tag on Tony Pollard. There's just a lot of money tied up in the running back position in a time in the NFL where the running back's value just keeps going down.
John, it is that time of year where people start to use the Cowboys to get their way. DeAndre Hopkins was on Des Bryant's Instagram or whatever the other day saying, give me a call or whatever. Stephon Diggs removed all references to the Bills from his Instagram account and posted a picture of him and his brother or his mom did and all that. And then, of course, the Odell Beckham situation still kind of looms out there. Odell seems the most likely of that, but do you think that they would make any of those other moves happen?
I don't, just because they haven't done anything like that really since the Amari Cooper trade. And so, yeah, maybe. I mean, I think that's something that they need to happen. I mean, if you could kind of piece everything together, perfect scenario-wise, I'd say the perfect scenario for them would be to pull off some type of a move like the Eagles did last year during the draft and when they traded for A.J. Brown. I mean, that move really, I think, was one of the biggest, if not the biggest, to put them over the top. And I think that's what this team is missing. Again, I think that what I feel they're missing and what they feel are missing are two different things. I think they feel like you plug in, let's say, like an Odell Beckham or maybe another receiver you draft, or maybe a bargain bin type wide receiver in free agency, and you're going to get that with a better CD Lamb and a healthier Michael Gallup, and that's going to solve those problems. I have my doubts about that. And so, those names are great. And when I hear that, people say, the Cowboys are going to make a big move, those are the names I think of. I think DeAndre Hopkins. I think of Stephon Diggs. I think of Mike Evans. But I have my doubts that this team, is going to make that type of commitment, because it's not only the trade for one of those players, but then you also have to pay them. And I just think that the way that they're structured, they will just continue to say, well, we're not going to pay for that because we still have to pay CD. We still have to pay Trayvon Diggs. We still have to pay Micah Parsons. So I would love to, come on the show and say I really feel like the Cowboys are close to making a big move. But if I said that, I would be lying.
John, it's been a crazy offseason already for quarterbacks. I mean, the ongoing Aaron Rodgers saga of what he will or will not do. Derek Carr to the New Orleans Saints. Geno Smith, now super highly paid and been in the league a decade, but now he's like all of a sudden as bright of a star as he's ever been. Lamar Jackson trying to figure out a deal in Baltimore. And then Daniel Jones with the big contract in New York. What are your thoughts kind of looking around as a guy who follows the league, all these quarterback pieces, and in particular, there in the NFC East, the decision by the Giants to ink Daniel Jones to another deal?
I would say out of all of those, the one that stands out most to me, and I don't know why that this just kind of struck me, but when I was out at the Combine, just talking to some other writers about the Aaron Rodgers situation, and just the, looking through the whole, entire NFL standings and going, wow, if Aaron Rodgers leaves, and it sounds like it's the chance of him leaving the Packers and not being their quarterback next season are as great as they've ever been. I'm like, Dak Prescott will be the longest tenured starting quarterback in the entire league. It's just crazy to think about that, because I'm just like, 2016 doesn't seem like it was that long ago. But man, you start going through the standings and you're just like, yeah, they've moved on. Patrick Mahomes kind of took over in 18, but I mean, there just isn't many guys that have been with that same team, and then you're just like, wow, Aaron Rodgers leaves Green Bay and Dak Prescott's the longest tenured quarterback. It also speaks to just how hard it is to find a quarterback that you think can be the difference maker and take you deep in the playoffs. I mean, let's be honest. Any organization can end up with Patrick Mahomes or let's say Joe Burrow and, be in a good spot. But those guys, it's so hard to find those guys, It's like, if you get LeBron or Kevin Durant, yeah, great. You can build around those guys, but it's so hard to find those guys. And so I think that's why ultimately, like you bring up the Daniel Jones thing, I think that's why they are going to pay. They're paying him basically Dak's contract, is because they saw enough this past year. And obviously Brian Daboll had to be a big part of that, saying that, no, we need this guy. Let's get this done. Are there better quarterbacks out there? Yeah, probably, but we know what this guy is. And even if that means paying him a little bit more than maybe we should, I think that there's more that he can do, you know, and so that's why they end up going that direction. I personally, I'm surprised a little bit. I don't think of him as that type of a quarterback. I think of him as more of a game manager. But I guess I guess we'll see. I just feel like there's been a pretty good sample size with Daniel Jones, and I just haven't seen enough there to warrant that type of contract. And then the Lamar Jackson one's the wildest to me, just because of the fact of how many teams have come out and said that they're not interested when, you know, we're not that far removed from, you know, some serious money being committed to Deshaun Watson. It just doesn't make sense that there wouldn't be a team out there or multiple teams interested in Lamar Jackson. And I don't know if that's ultimately because, you know, he doesn't have an agent or, you know, he's representing himself and things aren't working out with the Ravens and who knows, but it just, this is a business about winning. And I just feel like there's a lot of teams out there that don't have a quarterback as good as Lamar Jackson that could help them win. And so maybe it's the guaranteed money that he wants. That's too much that teams are willing to commit to, you know, kind of a run first quarterback. I'm not sure, but he's definitely a player when he's playing at his best. He can be amongst the best players in the entire league, if not the best player in the league. So that one's left me kind of scratching my head. But then again, that's why it goes back to with Dak. Like, it won't surprise me at all if he gets a contract extension this offseason. You know, they don't have any interest in going in another direction, and they feel like if they went in another direction, there's a better chance that they would end up in a worse situation than they are right now. So I think that's the number one thing that Mike McCarthy is going to be working on in these next few months, is to try and find the best possible way for Dak Prescott to have the most possible success, because he's not going anywhere. And for Mike McCarthy to keep his job, he's going to have Dak Prescott be successful.
John, okay, they're at 26. Who is your perfectly practical Cowboys Will McClay pick, and who is your wild-haired Jerry Jones, you know, locks everybody else out of the room pick?
I don't think that there is a Jerry Jones lock everybody else out of the room, because the closest one to that would be Bijan Robinson. I think there's other people in the room that would be like, all right, fine, let's do this. Like, this guy's so talented for him to fall to 26. I know we don't need a running back, but let's do this, and this is our guy for the future. We'll go one more year with Pollard, and then we'll move on, and we'll have this all taken care of. And I think a lot of people will be like, how much was this team going to really invest in a running back? So that one would probably leave people scratching their heads. As far as with Will McClay, I would think it would be one of these corners. You know, I've mocked Keely Ringo from Georgia to them before, just because, you know, there's just a lot of long corners that's what they look for. And I just think that's going to be the best value at the position. But I mean, from being in Indy, man, compared to when I left for Indy and when I've come home, like, tight end is way more in play at 26 than I ever thought. And it's kind of surprising to me. Like, they're really looking at these tight ends, and it's just interesting to me because they haven't drafted a tight end in the first round since David LaFleur in 97, you know, and they haven't taken one in the first two rounds since Gavin Escobar in 2013. And then, so, you know, when I was flying back, I was looking up, I'm like, let me see, like, when's the last time was the highest tight end that Mike McCarthy when he was in Green Bay? And there's nobody in the first or second round. His entire time in Green Bay, they never took a tight end in one of the first two rounds, you know? So because of that, it makes me think, I'm like, man, I understand this is tight end is maybe the deepest position, but for them to take a tight end at 26, I understand it'll have to be somebody that's a big-time playmaker, but it'll just be kind of surprising, but it is a position they're definitely interested in.
John, thank you. Appreciate it, buddy. Appreciate your time as always. John Machota, theathletic.com, and the Cowboys, the NFL Combine. And obviously we mentioned the news this week earlier with the Cowboys on Tony Pollard. And we didn't even get to that, but that's something from a couple of days ago.
Yeah, I wish we actually had more time. I wanted to ask him just what it's like for, you know, and maybe this is stuff that only is of interest to me, but Combine I've never been to. But I'm just curious, like, for him, like, just the experience of it now, you know, going there, what's that like, just to be in Indy and go through all that underwear Olympics and see all these executives and all the scuttlebutt and all the rumors that are going on. And then, you know, it's like we heard John McClaney was talking about how the, what was the big story that dropped they were getting ready to interview, who's the prospect, they got Georgia's prospect. They got
Jalen Carter.
Yeah, they're waiting to, you know, they're at the podium waiting for him to show up, only to find out through their cell phones as they're waiting for him to show up that he's not going to be there because this massive story is unfolding. And Yeah, it just seems like a wild experience, but yeah, we'll get him on again next week, and we can dive further into a lot of things.
That's a great question.
He does, like, for him personally, I asked him while we were off the air, like how long did he stay? And he left on Saturday night, because he has to, like, once the Cowboys guys can all do what they want. Once Jerry's had his on the bus, here's what I'm, don't count me out for making a big move now. Mm-hmm. That kind of moment. Once that's over and McCarthy's talked, they can do what they want. So he left before the last day. But, yeah, like he said, that the whole tight end thing is very intriguing to me.
So, Brett, your mark today on record, a few more quotes. We've done that. We've discussed tonight's men's basketball games in the Big 12. We did the John Ruiz story ensuing the NCAA. Kind of touched on the latest school in the ACC with North Carolina, discussing unequal revenue sharing. There's been a lot to get to, including our guest, 2 ADs, Jeremiah Dickey, Mack Rhoades, college coach in Paul Mills. And, man, we got a lot more to do. Plus, we've discussed that whatever it is between Eddie Lampkin Jr. and Jamie Dixon in TCU is not good. He's not going to be in Kansas City. Looks like that ship has sailed into the future.
Yeah, and I read a little bit more of the text messages that his mom apparently sent, and it alleges, that racial remarks were made at some point and just, mistreatment. And so, not to say that that's 100% how it happened, only going off of, those screenshots. That's what it's turned into. Now it's gone from TCU just announcing that he was, or I guess, I don't know if they announced, but the indication being he's away from the team. He stepped away.
Jamie Dixon has talked about it.
Yeah, Jamie Dixon has now talked about it. But I'm just saying, like, initially it was like, oh, he stepped away from the team. Oh, okay, that's really bad timing. That sucks, and that's a great player that they're going to be without. And then Jamie Dixon talks, and then you start seeing the screenshots, and it's, like I said a few minutes ago, it's way bigger than just the transfer portal. So we'll see how that goes.
And Chris Beard, according to some reports, is the leading candidate at Ole Miss. And so there's that as well. And you wonder, what about Syracuse? Although it does appear that Autry is going to be their at least interim.
No, he's the interim.
But not sure about what they'll do on who they get to replace a 47-year veteran Hall of Famer in Jim Boeheim. Paul Catalina's Top 5 is next. Waco Regional Tennis and Fitness on Lakeshore Drive in Waco has brand new carpet across the large area of all of what you have when it comes to equipment for cardio and weights. They have painted a couple of different rooms, mirrors everywhere. And then, of course, they've also redone the flooring inside the men's and women's locker rooms. The men's and women's locker rooms that have amenities like a whirlpool and sauna. Memberships available. Tennis clinics going on this week, with it being, for some, spring break. And there's a huge tournament that was going on there this morning with high schools. I saw Stephenville, and I saw schools from around the Waco area. If you want to get yourself fit, if you want to keep yourself fit, if you want to get healthy, that's a place to go, with memberships available for not only individuals but also for family. Tennis and pickleball available too. Waco Regional Tennis and Fitness on Lakeshore Drive in Waco.
I hate my job, but I don't mind getting up in the morning. I dread each day, but I can't wait to get out of bed. You ask me why, and what I'll say to you is true. Well, you can get breakfast tacos at Rudy's Barbecue. Scrambled eggs and brisket, they ain't fooling around. Salsa drap, son, they're the best in town. Barbecue for breakfast, yes, it's true. Put a smile on your morning at Rudy's Barbecue. Next in line.
Three Nations Brewing Company has 16 different beers on draft with a new beer every Friday. It also offers 2 air-conditioned tap rooms, a large indoor beer hall, a second-floor mezzanine offering a great overview of the brewing company and equipment, and patio where you can relax under the shade. Plus, you can now experience the new Three Nations Beer Garden Grill on our shaded patio. Grab a cold beer and enjoy a bite from our freshly prepared and delicious menu. Street tacos, quesadillas, freshly cooked burgers and dogs, and veggie burgers too. Nachos and so much more, all prepared and cooked on site. So come visit the award-winning Three Nations Brewing Company on East Vandergrift off I-35 in Carrollton.
TFNB Your Bank for Life is the official local bank of Baylor Athletics. Find out why more Central Texas are making TFNB their bank for life. Sign up for our Edge checking and savings accounts to earn interest or cash back. With 5 convenient locations and an award-winning mobile app, banking has never been easier. TFNB, your bank for life. Member FDIC.
Shorty's Pizza Shack at 12th and Bagby is a homegrown, locally owned pizza place that's out of this world. Everything from the dough, the sauce, the sausage topping is made fresh in-house. Not to mention the amazing pizza pillows, the chicken wings are to die for. Try the Sikkim sauce, chili cheese fries or tots, plus great specials on food and drink every single day. Shorty's is also the perfect spot to watch the game with your friends. Shorty's Pizza Shack at 12th and Bagby. Tell them Paul sent you by.
Boozers is the wedding ring store and more. If you're ready to get engaged or already married and want to upgrade your wife's ring for a special anniversary, Boozers is the place to go. With the largest selection of premier quality diamond engagement rings and wedding rings in Central Texas. They have 7 cases with over 300 styles of rings from top designers like Natalie Kay. Choose from yellow, white, or rose gold, plus beautiful top quality loose diamonds. With an in-house jewelry, they can also custom make anything you want. Bring in a picture or drawing and let Boozers create your one-of-a-kind pendant or ring. They can even use some of your old gold and diamond jewelry to create something new. At Boozers, you'll find a great selection of quality timepieces, and Boozers is the place for expert watch maintenance and repairs too. They specialize in expert Rolex watch repair for fine jewelry, watches, custom work, and more. Go to Boozers on Valley Mills and Lake Air Drive in Waco.
Boozers, the wedding ring store and more.
This is Paul Catalina's Top 5 at 5:45. Or is it 5:55? Either way, it's the Top 5.
Top 5 best landing spots for Anthony Richardson. And I'm going to keep doing draft stuff. And, Gator fans, I'm curious to hear your feelings on this. I really do think for him, he should have stayed another year. Now, as a fan of a team, and I'm sure that Garrett also feels this way, that's on the Gator schedule, thrilled that he didn't, because he was good enough already, but getting better would have terrified me and really would have changed the Gators' arc this year. So, but top 5 best landing spots for him, and he was a combine monster. But the combine and the film kind of show 2 different things. In that if he was the guy from the combine every second of the game, then he would be the first quarterback taken off the board, no question.
Is he the Mike Mamula of quarterback combine?
Well, I guess we'll find out.
All right.
But that's why I think he needs to wind up in the best situation, because I think he is someone who can be great, but we'll see. Number 5, and this would be the highest pick I have him going at, the Panthers at 9. Look, Frank Reich's the coach. He knows quarterbacks really well. I don't see Frank Reich going into his first year without signing a veteran like Jimmy Garoppolo or someone like that that's out there, or probably upcoming like a Jameis Winston or someone like that. So they'll have a veteran there that can maybe make him wait for a year and learn. And so I think the Panthers at 9 is a really good situation. I like Frank Reich. I know that didn't work out for him in Indianapolis the way that people thought it would, but that was because of bad quarterback decisions. I feel if they do better at that in Carolina, he'll do well, but we'll see, because that's an ownership and GM decision on down. But I do think that this could be maybe the highest place he could go. I would feel comfortable with their situation at quarterback.
Yeah, I mean, they definitely need somebody back there that's a bit more to the Cam Newton era than to whatever that's been the last several years, even though they're try and do the Cam Newton era all over again. That didn't work out so well. So let me ask you this, as somebody who doesn't follow this like super awfully closely. I know that we like Matt Rhule, and so we give him the benefit of the doubt when it comes to Carolina. But what other issues is Frank Reich facing here with this team outside of quarterback? I mean, how well set up are they to succeed? Is Anthony Richardson a missing piece that all of a sudden it's like, boom, you get in the turn the key and start driving?
I think they need one more offensive lineman, a tight end, a wide receiver to take some pressure off DJ Moore. I think they're fine at running back. They've got one of the best defensive ends in the league. They've got a really good young secondary. So I think they're closer than most would think. But I do think that, they need to have a unified plan, which I don't think they had. Owner, GM, coach in the last regime.
Yeah.
So
for sure.
But
it started off well and then quickly went different ways. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Number 4, the Titans at pick 11. Now this could change depending on what the Titans do. They've Derrick Henry and Ryan Tannehill are on expiring contracts. This is their last year for both of them. So would it be the worst thing for them to do this? I just don't think Anthony Richards is going to get to 11 because there's going to be a team like the Raiders or someone who, if they don't get one of those other guys, that are going to say this. And look, I think this is not knowing what the new regime, at least general manager-wise, of the Raiders will do. This is a total Raiders move to go get him, but the Titans would be a good situation. Even if it is the last year for Tannehill and Derrick Henry there, then he can start the new era. Rand Carthon, by the way, the GM of the Titans, not that this is either here nor there, but was a Gators legend back in his day at running back. So maybe he has an affinity and makes something happen. And even if the Titans maybe moved up and got him, I wouldn't hate that for them either. So, but I think that that's a good thing and make it exciting. I know they drafted Malik Willis last year, but we saw kind of where he is. He's kind of a more longer-term project.
Would that make you hesitant then to draft Anthony Richardson for that precise reason that you're worried about?
Because of Malik Willis? No.
Yeah.
No. I don't think he's as long-term
not because of Malik Willis, but that's what because of him, but just worried about doing the same thing all over again.
I think he's more of a sure thing than Malik Willis. I do. I mean, look, he's right, not. Yeah. Number 3, the Seahawks at 20 just signed Geno Smith to a 3-year deal. And look, if he fell to 20, I think he's probably a steal at 20. Just like he would be a steal at some of these other 2 picks that you're going to see. But that's an organization that clearly I think is pointed in the right direction. They made the right decision with Russ Wilson. Geno Smith can continue to do his thing there. They've got 2 good wide receivers. They've got 2 first-round picks. They can pick pretty much whoever they want at that 5th or 6th spot, where I think they're at 5. At 5 and make something happen. Yeah, I think this would be a great spot for him. And maybe they have to pick him at 5 and pick somebody else at 20. But the Seahawks, to me, would be wise to maybe look at him, even after signing Geno Smith.
Yeah, but why if you just signed Geno Smith?
Well, it's only a 3-year deal, and you can get out after 2, and then he can wait.
You know the best time to draft a quarterback?
Is when
you don't need one and you have one. Yeah.
Because I think the Packers are really set up well with Jordan Love, because I think the Jets thing is going to happen. They're in California meeting with Aaron Rodgers, and once they, do some ayahuasca and, watch Wizard of Oz while Pink Floyd's playing, like they'll get that all worked out. But I think that if the Seahawks mimic that, because Jordan Love, I think, is ready to go in Green Bay, this could be kind of a similar situation. And again, look, Geno Smith's had 1 good year. That's why he only got a 3-year deal. So say he has another good year and then another one where it's kind of middling, and then you kind of just, all right, it's Anthony Richardson time there in Seattle.
I mean, I would hate that for Geno, but, guys do get the bag and all of a sudden kind of revert back to the median, I guess. But, I mean, his first few years in the league, I guess the first couple he was actually playing a lot, but even then his interception numbers were insane and his touchdown interception ratio was bad. And then he had several years of just nothing, really. It's an amazing story. It's an amazing story that Geno's where he is, but I hope he keeps playing well and it's not just got a contract, get fat and happy, because, he waited a long time to make his mark, but he certainly made one last year.
Yeah. Number 2, the Lions at 18. They also have 2 first-round picks, 6 and 18, and they might have to draft them at 6. But the Lions, to me, again, they've got Jared Goff, who I think gets too much crap. I really do. I think he's a very fine and serviceable quarterback, if not good. He's been to the Pro Bowl several times. He's gotten a team to the Super Bowl. But I do think they've got to look longer term than Jared Goff. And this would be another situation, much like Geno Smith, where you could sit and wait. They've got weapons. Dan Campbell certainly did a great job there a year ago. It looks like there's some actual juice in Detroit for the first time ever. Not a bad go for Anthony Richardson to fall there.
Yeah, another spot where he can kind of just sit back and learn, I guess, and maybe that'll be what's best for him. But hard to imagine that if there's a run on quarterbacks, he's just kind of sitting around as a backup option for people. But, yeah, I mean, that would be a great situation for him. Probably most ideal would be something along those lines. So, yeah, that'd be interesting.
Yeah. And number one, and look, I see all you guys, throw it out, Washington. I'm sitting in this room with three Washington fans, and they all say no. So I'm not going to make that mistake. Number one, the Vikings at 23. Kirk Cousins also on an expiring contract, and maybe it's just time for him to go to another place. And the Vikings are an interesting spot. They've Dalvin Cook, they've maybe got another good year out of him, and they might even let him go to get under the cap. They've got to re-sign Justin Jefferson long-term. So who's going to be the long-term quarterback with Jefferson? I don't think it's going to be Kirk Cousins. So who's that? Could it be Anthony Richardson? We'll see. Now, the Vikings might also be a team that might be set up well next year, depending on how this year goes, to get what's going to be another good quarterback class. And there'll be a lot of teams that, if they start off the year poorly and say are in the 1-6, 1-7 range, are in the Caleb Williams, let's not try too hard derby for this thing. But I do think that the Vikings, I like what they have going. I like what they have going at GM, at coach. Wouldn't be a bad spot for him to sit and wait for a year.
Caleb Williams, then Drake May, and whoever else we're not even thinking of
Jordan
right now. Jordan Travis, yeah, shoot. And probably some others that, if we want to sit down. But those are three pretty big-time prospects right there. Why do you think Kirk Cousins, just age-wise, is that what you're referring to?
Yeah, and he's got one more year left on the deal.
Gotcha.
Like they're going to have to and Jefferson's going to break the bank here, as he should. They should... If he continues on the path, they should rename one of the Twin Cities to Jeffersonville because he's just that good. So, they're going to have to, make sure, okay, he's taken care of long-term. Is the long-term guy to maximize Justin Jefferson? Is that Kirk Cousins? I just don't think so. And age and, money, like, do you go younger and create, the new power duo? That's what I think is going to happen.
Quinn Ewers as well in the next year's draft, perhaps. We'll see how that goes if he has a big year, but that's always been the expectation. But yeah, Vikings, Justin Jefferson is an incredible player. I mean, just superb player. So yeah, any quarterback would be lucky to play for him. But I say the no thing to Washington just because that's probably a good idea. I mean, maybe that's the secret key that's been missing. But man, it just seems like they've swung and missed on so many daggone quarterbacks that, like, a guy who's not, to me, like a sure thing, like a super all the way around polished, ready to go dude, I just get very anxious about as a Washington fan because they've had the project guys far too often.
Yep.
And I just don't have a lot of interest in them trying to make another project happen when they've failed over and over and over again. So, yeah, that's why I say it the way that I did. But I think I said yesterday off the air that if they were there and the opportunity arises, it would not shock me in any way. Oh, yeah, that's a total Washington pick. It's absolutely a Washington pick, but that's why I'm saying no, is because that's typically been the Washington pick. But, yeah, good luck to Anthony Richardson.
All right, Paul, very nice, which means if Washington doesn't get involved, he'll end up being
probably tremendous, yeah.
Yeah, that's just the way it is. Get a quarterback like Green Bay, even if you have Brett Favre, created a little bit of tension. Get a quarterback if you have Aaron Rodgers with Love, even though it created tension. But you always are playing with leverage rather than even with the drama than if you're begging, needing, risking, whoever it might be because of the fact they play quarterback. Garrett Ross, thank you. Jack McKenzie, appreciate Jack. He's headed to Kansas City. We will have coverage again of what happens tonight for tomorrow. And, of course, Baylor will be done by the time we talk with you tomorrow and have our guests lined up for the show. And I believe because of today, Max Olson should be with us tomorrow. His thoughts about the Brett Yormark media session from earlier. Thank you, all of you. Text line, chat room, our sponsors, everyone. Paul Craig, I'm David. Thank you. Have a great night. This is 365 Sports.
Ideal MRI is a